Here we go. Okay, hello. We are live. I'm going to give it a little while. Wait till I see it pop up in my other screen on YouTube. I've got
You're such a good YouTuber, Bethany. I just plunge in.
I try. Oh, here we are. We're up. Okay.
Okay, cool.
Okay. Hey, Michelle. Hi, Jessica.
Hello, chat.
Yeah, we got a lot of people. Okay, so hi, everybody. I am joined by three wonderful ladies tonight to discuss some controversy that's been going on Twitter. I'm going to assume you know them, probably. Jess Owens of Book Community, Ashley from Bookish Mugs, Mara from Books Like Whoa. Excited to discuss the controversy tonight. And I have some of the Twitter threads, the relevant Twitter threads, up in another tab, so we can take a look at some of those. Hello, how is everybody doing tonight? Hi.
Is that for us or for the chat?
Anybody.
Okay.
You know.
Jess, how are you doing? Because it's like so dark early where you are.
I took a nap.
That's good.
All day I was like, oh, I feel like I'm just so ahead. I feel like I'm missing something. I know there was something on my to-do list. And then I'm like cooking at like 8:30. And I was like, this. Yes.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Hey, Alexa, thank you.
Agreed. It is a good color for you.
It is.
Thanks. Hello. Yay. Oh, well, good.
Yay.
Okay, so there has been some controversy in the last, I guess, couple weeks, but a lot of it kind of blew up in the last week, I would say.
On bookish internet, I never. Impossible.
Shocking, I know. It's like Jess never has anything to tell us about.
Jess is scraping the bottom of the barrel every week.
Yeah, you know. Hello. Oh man. Hey, Libby. Oh, thank you. Yay. Good evening. Okay, so basically what we're going to be talking about tonight is, as you can see in the title, some controversy about content warnings. And this all began with, from what I can tell anyway, with a thread. A lot of the tweets you're going to see originally came from Silvia Moreno Garcia, and then she kind of retweeted some other people. I love Silvia Moreno Garcia as a writer. She always has interesting things to say. This is an interesting take on things, and be kind to her because she has gotten a lot of heat for all of this.
She's going through it.
So maybe what I'll do is, I wonder if I should share my screen. It always takes me a minute to figure this out. Okay, where is
Let's you share a tab if you want to do that.
Yeah, I know. I'm just trying. I feel like I lost. I lost one of the ones that I had. So like the original one, I had it, and then it just like went to something else. So hold on. Yeah. Sorry. Okay. So of course this would happen. Okay. You know what? It's all good. It's all good.
She had so many. I got confused.
I know. She
had retweeting and quote tweeting her own threads. And I was like,
I know. It was very confusing. Like somebody needs to put it all together somehow. Okay, so basically she originally had this thing. I remember actually it was on June 11th. So maybe I can look by the date. That actually might be the easiest way for me to find this. I'm going to do it that way because I remember the date. So June 11th. I think this was the original one. Okay, let me see if I can share this thread. Sorry, everybody.
It's all good.
Share screen. Okay. All right. So this was the original tweet thread on the 11th. Okay. And she's talking about content warnings and saying the other thing is these can be wildly inaccurate. I had someone content warn one of my works for poverty, another one for animal death, where the dog lives. The Storygraph lists Mexican Gothic for cannibalism as explicit, moderate, and mild. Which one is it? A little bite or a buffet, which is kind of funny. Okay. But she goes on to say, what I've seen happen most commonly with warnings is that when it's something people like, they'll read it anyway, like a superhero show, etc. But when it's some author of color or minority writer, it immediately becomes an impassable hurdle. So Beloved can't read it because incest, but Game of Thrones gonna watch all the seasons. Like, fair point. It's an especially easy tool to wield for censors who hate things like LGBT or GLBT authors or POC. They can hide their hatred under a fig leaf, etc. So she goes on to talk about a specific thing. And this, I think, is really interesting. So then this, a while later, kind of blew up. And let me see if I can switch. I have to remove this. And this is, I don't know why they make this kind of complicated, guys. Sorry. Hold on. So then this happened. Figure we'll kind of look at some of this and then we can discuss. Okay, so this is the 13th. So a couple days later, she tweeted this thread. I had someone contact me and say this thread of mine means I hate readers and I'm a bad author and they'll never read my books again. This is the problem about trigger warning discourse. We can't talk about anything, even when I was expressing concerns as a POC. I made it clear, I think, on this and another thread that I do not think a mandatory external system of trigger warnings should be applied to a book. That is, an outside body shouldn't be rating books. I didn't say anything about fan and external trigger warnings. I even mentioned systems such as Storygraph as being more adequate to provide readers with the tools they need than any printed warning on a book. I mentioned that in a book I published, The Rat of Ice and Salt, I had an intro, forward, and afterward because it was highly volatile material, queer horror, and sometimes intros can and should do the heavy lifting of looking at a topic. I mentioned the practical issues of trigger warnings, including Amazon. Finally, and most crucially, I talked about POC and GLBT writers and how trigger warning systems could be weaponized against them. And any guesses what happened? A reader weaponized my opinion on trigger warnings. It's great. Exactly the kind of situation I feared, that someone would use trigger warnings as an excuse to dismiss or label POC and GLBT writers, similar to how the MPAA has constantly weaponized ratings against the GLBTQ communities. What this reader is doing right now is pointing at me and saying I'm bad based on the fact I have serious concerns about a mandatory external trigger warning system, and there isn't even a mandatory trigger warning system. You can imagine what might happen if there was one that could happen. Okay, so she kind of goes on here, and then I will summarize some of the later things that happened, which is some other authors, which I thought was really interesting, went and looked at their Storygraph. If you're not familiar with Storygraph, it's like a newer thing, sort of like Goodreads, except it allows you to tag content warnings or trigger warnings for books that you read, and whether they're mild, medium, or like heavy. I don't know. It's like 3 different levels, which is what she was referencing earlier. For anybody who doesn't know, and so some other authors of color came back and said, yeah, I went and looked, and here's a list. They did kind of side-by-side comparisons of like, here's a list of all of the trigger warnings people have put for my book, and highlighted would be all the ones that are not in that book. So it seems like there's 2 issues here, right? Like, so Sylvia Moreno Garcia has her thoughts about a external system of dealing with content warnings, but then other authors are also talking about this problem of some readers and reviewers falsely putting content warnings on books by authors of color that don't actually exist. So that's another issue. And then also this issue of, as for readers, how do you, like what she said about the Game of Thrones versus Beloved thing, that there are people who, like, if it's a thing they like, they don't really care, but they'll use it as an excuse not to teach or not to read books by authors of color or LGBT authors, which I think is interesting. So then the question is, like, we can discuss all of those elements, and then for us as readers, as reviewers, what do we do with all of that? So that's a lot, but it's like to give people kind of a summary of like, so what happened. I'm going to take a look back at the chat real quick, and if you guys want to discuss thoughts, I know, yeah, it's a lot to catch up on. So, yeah,
it is that.
Oh, this is interesting. I am not aware of this, Eric. Carmen Maria Machado might have kicked it off with an op-ed in the newspaper. Interesting. That I
saw that in that was in early May, and I saw someone referencing. Oh, I hate to bring this person up. The J.M. Buckler lady was saying that she wouldn't want her child to be taught is it In a Dream House by Carmen Maria Machado?
Oh, yeah.
And
you did.
I don't know. I guess I think it was, I didn't read the whole thing. I think it might've been like recommended for maybe a high school classroom list or something. And of course, you know, people are like, I wouldn't want my child reading about these things.
Interesting. I mean, it's a great book. It isn't intense. I mean, but interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. I was first seeing this in the context of a romance reader tweeted saying, I don't feel like I need to give a content warning for explicitly described sex in a romance novel. Like, I don't feel like that's a content warning I should have to give. And then another person kind of came in underneath that and said, well, but that's ace-phobic for you to think that that's not something that needs to be warned. And to me, so that was my first, like, inkling what was going on.
Interesting.
And I kind of was taken aback by that, because I'm like, well, I don't, like, the same way that I don't feel like you need to have a content warning for that there's murder in a thriller, I don't feel like you need to have a content warning that there's sex in a romance.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was kind of my first
Interesting.
inkling, something, you know, that the timeline was popping off.
That's interesting.
I saw it with Kaylin Barron. The first thing I saw was like a tweet that said, it was like, good morning, y'all got me fucked up. And something was, and I was like, oh gosh, who's got her? And talking about Storygraph. And then I saw something else, someone quote tweeted Silvio Moreno Garcia. So I was like, I'm so confused. And then once you sent a message, I'm like, oh, this is all connected. Let me go back and try to figure it out.
Yeah. Ashley, had you seen any of this at all, or not really?
And having a lot of free time on their hands, man. I don't know what y'all do during the day, what y'all got going on, or what free time y'all have. So it took me a minute to catch up, because I literally, unless I have a 15-minute break at work, I'm not really in the know of a lot of things. So I saw someone quote tweet something, and then I took that out of context, because the quote tweet itself was out of context. It was taken as a snapshot from the larger conversation. And then I saw some people say, you're taking this out of context. And I was like, I literally got out of I was like, I can't do this today. But then when you sent the message, I went back and I kind of went back and read everything. And it's interesting kind of seeing some of the responses, because with a lot of these discussions that we have, I feel like they're not black and white, and people try to make it black and white. I think the context of the situation also implies, or it determines your view. So, for example, ALA has a statement against using content warnings. I actually have the statement if y'all want to.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. ALA's statement against it is that labeling and rating systems, as it applies to trigger warnings, y'all know what I'm trying to say. Prejudice labels are designed to restrict access based on value judgment that the content, language, or theme of the material, or the background or views of the creators of the material render it inappropriate or offensive for all or certain groups of users. When labeling is an attempt to prejudice attitudes, it is a censor's tool. So the reason why ALA is very against content warnings, where like you're not going to go to, unless the author has themselves put it within the pages of the book, you're not going to find content warnings. If we put stuff up, we're not going to give you content warnings, because kind of lending to what she was saying in her thread is that it can be used. It can, and I mean, that's my perspective, is that it can be weaponized against certain groups, and kind of like, unfortunately, bringing up Mrs. Buck, we hate talking about that woman. in situations like that, people do use it as a means to go to a school board and say, this book has XYZ content, I want it pulled. So then you start dealing with banned and challenge books, which is censorship. So it's very, very tricky. I understand it. I have written reviews with content warnings, with trigger warnings, because for a lot of people that I know watch my content, it is important for them. But it's a twofold thing for me. So like as a creator, I get it, but as a librarian, I don't. You know, it's strange. It's not a yes or a no, and I think people want to make it a yes or a no. And in a situation like this, it can't be.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think that's an interesting perspective.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I mean, I totally understand it. I think, you know, coming at it from the perspective of being a booktuber, you know, I try, especially as like the years go on and I get more feedback from my audience and like I'm made aware of things that I hadn't thought of in a book or whatever. I kind of try to flag things in my reviews that I notice, but I do, you know, the concept that I think Sylvia was responding to, this idea of having like an external body who's going to go through and say like, thus saith us, here are the official content warnings. Like, I just think that is not realistic to ask in some ways, because I just think that there's certain, I think it's assuming that all readers are going to have the same response to all art. And also it takes context out. So like, for instance, I'm thinking of, okay, incest in The Color Purple versus incest in Game of Thrones has a completely different context and may be very triggering to somebody in one instance and completely fine in the other, purely because of the way it's portrayed. Like, not approving of incest, to be clear, but in Game of Thrones, there is a very different romantic context for that incest, as opposed to in The Color, for example, in The Color Purple. So like, I think also, so like, yeah, okay, maybe you come out and say content warning for both, but I think it's not, there's no nuance in terms of like, what, like, in what context does that warning need to be given? Like, I just think it's treating all readers the same, and it's treating all like subject matter as always being the same in a book, which is just, I think, not realistic.
Yeah.
I think that another good point that Sylvia was trying to make too is that people are not recognizing the whole idea and concept of implicit bias either. So you can have the best intentions in the world, but no matter what you do, even if you try to be as unbiased as possible, it's not going to happen. So to have someone make a definitive list, or to say, oh yeah, you know, we're going to be the I don't know, group, organization, or structure that's going to place these content warnings in the beginnings of the book, who's doing it they're bringing their own personal experience and biases into it. So even then, it's still not going to be accurate. So I don't know if people were like, it needs to be a system that does it. Personally, that's not going to work. I don't care. Even with an author, because this was brought up too, and I saw a couple of comments on it. You know, I have seen more authors now kind of give content warnings in the beginning of their books. They may not be able to even capture everything that may be a trigger, because it's coming from their perspective. What I may read in their book as a trigger or something that, I don't know, content warning, they may not perceive it as such, because it's not their lived experience. They're not thinking about it that way. Whereas my lived experience is going to determine what I feel like is a content warning, or what should be a content warning or a trigger warning. I will say, because I had an instance of this on Sunday.
Oh, tell people. Tell about this. I thought.
Yes, man. Like, that was crazy. I had an instance on Sunday where I got a notification from Goodreads that the author of a book, the author of a book that I had read in October of last here, so
Mhm.
you're hunting for reviews, made a comment on my review to tell me I was wrong because there was no incest in their book. Well, you know I was going to come with receipts, regardless of the situation. The reason why I got so upset about that is because literally the description of the book, the plot of the book, there was no reference to incest whatsoever. It came in the last 3 to 5 pages of the book. Now, in a situation like that, I would have appreciated some type of inkling, or I don't know, something that it possibly could have been an incestuous situation. But there was nothing in the description. There was nothing. So this is a part of me where I'm like, I do understand sometimes with content warnings, because I read romance. I'm willing to read anything. Aliens, I don't know, people with 10 legs. It don't matter to me. I'll try it once, but there you go. I'm there for it. But there's that line that I draw where I'm like, incest and romance is not for me. And the fact that they set that book up to wait to the very last minute to insert an incestuous relationship pissed me off, because there was nothing there that could have given any indication of it. And
you posted like screenshots of those pages.
Screenshots of the book.
Yeah,
I was like,
clearly
incest. You have two twins getting off in the bed together, and you're telling me the incest was implied?
I think my read on that was that there was an assumption that the only real incest would be between like P and V or like opposite gendered siblings. That I was reading some like homophobia, basically, of like, oh, it's not incest if
it doesn't count if it's just girls.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
That's how I read that.
That's interesting.
That just pissed me off.
Because it's like that's gross. Like it's or I mean, like, I don't want to yuck people's yum. There are some people who enjoy like an incest kink, but to your point, Ashley, I think that like if it's a kink thing, it's kind of standard practice within romance that you signal that in the description, right?
Yeah.
Like there are plenty of hot brothers who are sharing a woman in Romancelandia. Like that's a thing that happens a lot, but like it's very clearly signaled usually on the description, right? Like it'll be like, you know, brothers Kale and Caleb or whatever their names are. I've always yearned for the one woman who can make them, you know, whatever. Like that it's signal, so you know what you're getting into. Like you're not going to get surprised on the last 3 pages. And like, does the author have to do that? No, but you are running the risk of, you know, a reader coming across that and being like,
what the hell?
Octopusing out of it, of like, that's not what I thought I was getting into in this book.
Like you threw that in there for kicks and giggles, and I'm like, it didn't even make sense. Literally nothing about that book had anything to do with the two sisters even looking at each other sideways. So to all of a sudden flashback and they're in bed together, I'm like, whoa.
Oh wow.
Whoa.
Okay. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay, so there's some like interesting things in the comments. I know I'm gonna miss some of this, guys, but there's like some interesting conversations happening in here. This I thought was interesting. Struggle when there's content warning for violence. So as a reviewer, I will put spoilery content warnings, but I will say they're spoilery. Like I'll do a spoiler warning. Personally, like I will still do content warnings for spoilers and twists in my reviews if I think it's like serious enough. But I will say, spoiler, there are spoilers in the content warning, so FYI, you know.
I think it depends on how detailed you get, though, because like again in a thriller, so like I personally do usually put a content warning for sexual assault if I encounter it in any book. Like I will, at the end of my review, I will usually put CW essay. For me, as long as I'm not giving the context that a spoiler happens in or a content warning happens in, to me, that's not really a spoiler. I don't know. Maybe I'm sure people will disagree with me, but for me, I'm like, okay, in a thriller, I don't think it's too much of a spoiler that SA could be happening. And I want to let you know that this is a book where that does happen.
I think the thing is that for me, I will, because, and you know what, this is probably because of how I respond to different content, is I will actually specify, like, for instance, if it's like towards a minor or a child, like I will specify like some of those things, which can be spoilery sometimes, where I will give a little, I'll sometimes give a little more context if it to me, it, but again, and you know, to this point, right, like, oh, this is interesting, Alexa, we have to talk about this. But like a couple people had mentioned, right, that like, for instance, there can be fat phobia in a lot of things. Do we call out every instance of it? And I think part of it is like reviewers are going to call out the stuff that bothers them. So like fat phobia in books bothers me. So usually, yes, I will call it out in my reviews, but I don't feel like everybody has to do that. So part of it is like getting to know who you follow. Who you follow.
Because I only recently started adding, I guess, I don't always write a review on Goodreads. I only recently started adding like content warning or trigger warning, and still sometimes forget to do that on written reviews and on like if I'm doing a wrap up, because I feel like this sounds really like, I'm not trying to be an asshole, but like there's not really anything in books that trigger me particularly. So it never came to my mind until like being more in the bookish community that people, so, and for me, it's still very general things like, yeah, if there's like sexual abuse, domestic violence, something against a child, or like death of a loved one, death of a child, something like that. So, but when I see other ones, I'm like, oh, things I wouldn't even think of. Some of them, like I never would think of. Fat phobia. I've seen death of a pet. People tag just
people. There's people who are really feel very strongly about that.
Not like these things don't affect me. Not like I'm like sad, but I'm not personally like I can't read that content. So I think I miss a lot of things some other people might find like they would want a warning for, and. But just like, you know, we've said and Sylvia said, like, it's just hard because everyone's experience is different. And then it's like, what do you just spend your whole time looking for anything that's like, well, somebody might not like this. Let me write it down. And it's kind of what people have done on Storygraph on some books. Like they've gone for like everything they could twist in any sort of way, or just added in ones that don't even exist. And so I think it's just a really messy area. And like, I don't know, it's hard.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, and I mean, I also think that's why I try to always say content warning rather than trigger warning, because I also think the idea of actually getting triggered by something is different than knowing something is there. So like, friends, actually, Jess, you and I had a discussion about this in my comments, because I read The Midnight Library by Matt Haig, and I was like, incredibly triggered by it because it has suicidal ideation and self-harm, which is, you know, I've had a history of depression, and that hasn't been an issue for me for like literally more than a decade. And I haven't been triggered by that content in literally more than a decade, but for whatever reason, that one like full on triggered me. But I wouldn't have really, and you wrote something like, oh my gosh, I should have warned you. And I'm like, I think even if you had told me that that was what the book was, I don't know that I would have automatically not read it, because it's not something that has triggered me in so long. Yeah. So that's the other piece of it. I think that there can be this feeling that if I list everything that could be a problem for someone, nobody is ever going to get triggered by a book or have to put something down or whatever. Yeah. And that's just like not how life works, because like sometimes it's your mood, sometimes it's what season of life you're in or whatever. Like you're never going to be able to protect everyone from every emotion a book might incite in them.
Oh yeah. Well, and I think part of it too is like, it's not always even that then you don't want to read it. I know for me, like a lot of times there are a handful of things that I just won't read, but like for a lot of stuff, it's just like, I would like to know going in so I can be sort of like emotionally and mentally prepared for the fact that I'm going to encounter certain things in a book. So I think it just varies. And yeah, I will say, I wanted to talk, and if you guys have other things to say, you can jump into, but like I did want to talk about this comment Alexa had up here.
Well, I think that it's interesting because there are some things that I've seen in books that I think that I have experienced myself. And while there could be a content warning or a trigger warning, like you said, Mara, there's so many factors that can be into, that can go into play with that. It could be the type of mood you're in. It could be a certain day of the week. It could be something that happened in that day. And I think that, like you said, people feel as though it protects people, but in some ways it doesn't, because even knowing some stuff going, into it beforehand, it still may not protect you. And I get why, and I get being emotionally and mentally prepared, but sometimes for me personally, that doesn't even help, because for the Gilded Ones, I knew what I was walking into, like, when I read that book, because I heard so much about it. That book still took me, like, out the game for a second. Like, I literally was like, whoa, I knew that it was going to be extremely violent. I knew that it had to do with, like, a lot of violence towards minors, especially young women. But even knowing that going into it, it didn't help at all. It didn't help.
Or like, it's a joke in our family that if the St. Jude's Children's Hospital commercials come on, you have to change the channel or else I will literally burst into tears. Like, it's doing its job. Like, it's talking about children who have cancer. But there's nothing anybody could do to prepare me. Like, I sit here and I know that that's what that's for. But like, it just incites that emotion in me no matter what.
Like the Sarah McLachlan one.
Yeah.
I'm
that
like,
too. As soon as the arms of the angel, like, I'm just like,
oh, she's got to go. Yeah.
Oh man,
She's ruined that song for me. Ruined that whole song.
Yeah. I think for me too, it is different when it's a book for kids or for teenagers. So like, I'm gonna be like, I'll probably feel stronger about putting content warnings for like a YA book if it's got like very violent content, for instance, or like more than like things that I might not feel the need to really mention in an adult book all the time, because I don't always do content warnings, but especially in YA books, if there's more intense content than you would expect for the age range, I will tend to call it out.
Like Courtney Summers' books, I pretty much always put. She's the author of Sadie, right?
Yeah. Oh, okay. So this was the comment that I actually wanted to talk about. This I thought was interesting, that there was some offense in that there were content warnings ignoring cultural context. One was a South Asian book with arranged marriage, and it was content warning in a pejorative way. So this is interesting because I think all of us probably kind of agree that there probably shouldn't be an external body deciding on content warnings. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. But there is this issue.
Are you volunteering, right? Bethany? You want to take that on?
I have enough going on. Thank you very much. Okay. No, but I do think it's interesting that the other piece of this is that reviewers can, bring their own prejudices to we've talked about this before, right? That like people can do this in their reviews, which is interesting, but also in the content warnings and the way that they phrase content warnings. So I don't know if you guys have thoughts on that.
It's dicey.
I just struggle with. I know this came up like in a book community or whatever a while ago, where people were kind of advocating for something, the external body, kind of like, I think Sylvia mentions it, like how they have the rating system for movies. And that just won't work. And I don't know how you take. So when Alexa was talking about, is that saying like a book with arranged marriage, someone put that as a content warning? Like for a book?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and I'm trying to imagine myself like in what context might that be triggering? Potentially, if you come from a culture where that was something that was maybe attempted to be forced on you, and you don't want to read about that because you have some sort of trauma associated with it. Like, I guess I can see that, but I don't know that it would have ever occurred to me to put a content warning for that there. And I can see the point of that being weaponized to like condemn cultures where that is a part of their heritage. You know what I mean? Or like that is part of traditional practice that still happens. And like there are plenty of people who are in perfectly happy arranged marriages to this day. Right. So like, you know, some of this, I think content warnings also verge into like yucking people's yums. And like that also makes me uncomfortable of like, okay, like DubCon is not for me. I get why people might want to put a content warning on that for sure. But, there you go. But you know, also like maybe I'm more okay with like, you know, two brothers getting it on with a single woman, and maybe Ashley's not into that. So like we all have different things that we're willing to read about. So it's like I kind of want to leave space for people both to like warn each other about things, but also to just be like, yeah, that sounds great. Like, you know, thank you for letting me know that there's, you know.
Yeah. Well, and this is part of why I'll put content warning. Like sometimes if they're more serious content warnings, I'll mention them in the body of my review, but most of them I'll list at the end. So like if people don't care, you know, they don't have to see them. But yeah. It's complicated.
Is there some way, I know Sylvia mentioned in like a book that she wrote having kind of a discussion at the beginning. And I've seen that because maybe that gives more like kind of trying to explain the context instead of just a list, you know, of things that are triggering and then, or could be triggering. And like maybe, I don't know, is there a way for like book synopses like on the back of the books or in the dust jackets, some way to like maybe provide more context, but then is that spoilery? Like, I don't know what's a good way to try to like hint at certain themes that might be in a book.
Yeah.
The reason why I have an issue with that from a librarian perspective, the reason why I have an issue with that in youth materials is that people will weaponize that. You will have parents who will attempt to censor what their kids read. You will have teachers, unfortunately, gotta love them. Most of them, they will use that as a tool to weaponize and to remove access for kids to be reading those materials, which I think Alexa just kind of brought that up a little bit in the comments before, like clean YA.
Okay. I'm so far behind on the comments right now.
That's where I kind of get into the nitty gritty of, I can't say for adults, but I know because I see it firsthand, putting stuff, and you know, it's up to the discretion of the author whether they want to do it. Like, you know, I just said the Gilded Ones, you know, Namina made that decision, which, I mean, I'm grateful for it. Did it help me? No, but I mean, at the end of the day, I'm grateful that she did it. But I think that putting that in, because I know people are asking, why don't authors just do that? You know, put content warnings or synopsis in their books. I think when you start talking about age categorizations, then even that becomes a little tricky, because parents and teachers and banning and censorship, the more, and I hate to do that, but the more that they know about stuff like that, the more that they're willing to start to pull stuff. If there's certain themes that they don't feel like should be taught in schools, they don't feel like their kids should have access to, and it's so dicey, and then it takes away from what we call those windows, mirrors, sliding glass doors. Kids need those experiences when they're young, because that's the way that they build empathy, and that's the way that they get a good look at themselves and the world around them. So me personally, from a librarian perspective, like I said, my perspective is so dual, it's crazy. I would not be here for that at all.
Yeah. Well, and like you can think about just, I mean, given the headlines recently in the news, if somebody put a content warning for like critical race theory in a book,
But they want to make Juneteenth a national holiday.
Oh my
Yeah,
god.
exactly.
Oh
Make
my
it make
god.
sense.
Yeah.
But
I don't even
but
want to
I mean,
talk
I
about
just bring that up because like if that would like I'm just using that as an example because like if I saw that as a quote unquote content warning, I'm like, cool, let's read that. Like that sounds great. Like let me give this to my kid. But then like I could see obviously there's other people who would like want that to be there so that they could, to the point Bethany and Alexa were raising, like censor marginalized communities in some way, or like frankly just like try to deny the reality of history, but whatever. But like then I also can see how you could like game the system. So like what if I wanted a book that I hated to not be read by, you know, people who don't like critical race theory? Well, maybe then I could put content warning critical race theory in my tag and keep people from reading a book I didn't want them to read if I thought that would affect them. So like just in terms of like how you game the system, there's like a lot of opportunities for trolling and trying to be subversive, I feel like.
So I don't know how much you guys are familiar with Storygraph. I sort of tried it out at one point and then I was like, this is too much. I can't do 2 platforms. But I do think this is interesting because they have like these 3 levels, and this is it's so subjective, you guys. I mean, like I just think about, for instance, right? Like let's talk about like if like graphic sex, if we're gonna call that a content warning, right? In a romance novel. If somebody, I'm just saying, like just as an example, like if somebody is new to the romance genre, right? They might read like The Wedding Date and be like, this is so graphic because it's not closed door. But then somebody who's read like Katie Roberts would be like, this is barely even there. Like, right? I mean, I'm just saying like the way that you interpret this is so like it's not objective at all. So I will say I'd be curious to hear your guys' thoughts on the Storygraph system of content warnings, because like, on the one hand, I like the idea of making it easy for people to list content warnings, but at the same time, there is part of me that is like uncomfortable with every review having it listed where they want you to include all these content warnings. And I don't know, like, I just like, I'm a little uncomfortable with the structure and I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
I didn't like it.
So,
I haven't used
either.
Okay. I haven't used it,
not just me.
But I saw like in Sylvia's or in some threads comparisons between some books, and I know people had commented before like they liked Storygraph because of that, but I had never checked out the feature. But like seeing it, especially on the ones where people have gone to the extreme, is I don't know, it's a lot, because it seems like that's the focus instead of the review. It's like, look at all these things I could find to tag this book as that are potentially harmful. And I know this was one of the threads that Sylvia quote tweeted, and I think somebody brought this up in the chat also, that people also take it, there's that extreme of like trying to find every single super bad thing in a book, but also just like random content warnings for like, in the thread they were saying like they saw a content warning for work, or just like the simplest thing, content warning for food, hunger, like just people just like wanting to
content warning for email.
Yeah, like people yelling, I don't know, like, so people, there's like extremes, and it's just like, are you just trying to get attention? Are you just trying to put things to say this book has so many things? So I don't know.
Well, and for the completionist, they're gonna look through like all the different things and like, well, maybe it has this. Like, I don't know. I didn't like it as a system. It's like somebody had a beer that could be alcoholism.
Yes.
Like, I don't know.
Yes.
I mean, like,
content warning for excrement. I mean,
well, I mean, look,
we're talking about 9,000.
I mean, but again, it's like, what is the context
like,
for that? Is that like
2 girls, 1 cup type of level? Absolutely.
Exactly.
Right.
That's what I'm thinking. Like, if it's some sort of like kink play, sure.
Right, sure. But if you're cleaning up after your dog,
Yeah.
Or like, maybe somebody gets food poisoning and there's
Right.
like,
I mean,
some
yeah.
run and Rhea.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that's a very different context than I just don't know. Like,
yeah.
I mean, if you need to see how differently people interpret something in a book, just go look up on Book Talk, like people talking about quote unquote spicy books, and it's like, ooh, ACOTAR. Oh, I was so shocked. And I'm like,
Okay.
thank God they found the Ice Planet Barbarians now. So
right. Well, it's funny.
evolving.
Well, but like, when I first read ACOTAR, that was how I felt, because I also had not read that kind of stuff. So when I first read them, I was like, whoa, this is a lot, but now I'm like, okay. So it's like exposure matters too. So yeah, I don't know.
Yes, B, I brought up 2 Girls, 1 Cup. I'm showing my age, okay? All right? Right? If you don't know what it is, do not go and Google it.
No,
leave it alone. Leave it alone.
Oh my gosh. Oh,
Because
wow.
I do not want anybody coming from it. Ashley was talking about 2 Girls, 1 Cup on the live, so I wouldn't Google it.
Please don't.
Don't
Just
do
say
it.
no.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I do think it's interesting because there are some authors who will have content warnings, maybe not in the book, but like on their website or on the Goodreads page, which I appreciate, especially for YA authors who have more intense content. I like that some of them will do that. So like Liam Strickland, who wrote Beyond the Black Door, for instance, they have content warnings for their books because they are more intense YA books, especially their newest one, which I think is great. But that's them doing it on their own, I don't know.
I thought it was actually cool. I was attempting here to bring it up, but it's too much clicking, so I gave up. In the most recent Ruby Dixon book that came out, at the beginning, she basically said, like, I want to like experiment with giving you guys content warnings, but I'd love your feedback as to if this is helpful or like what the best way to do this is. So she had like spoiler warning, spoiler warning, spoiler warning, and then she had like a bunch of different like tropes and then like potential triggers. And I thought that was an interesting approach to it because it's more collaborative with her audience of like, hey, I've heard that some of you guys want this, but I want to do this in a way that's actually like helpful to the ones of you who want this. So like, this is my attempt at it. Like, let me know how this goes. And I think for self-pubbed authors in particular, that could be like a really good, like, to me, that felt like the right spirit with which to approach undertaking that, which is like, I am trying to be helpful to you. And like, let's collaborate to make this something that is helpful to those of you who want it.
Right.
Yeah.
I think this is exactly right. I know I'm way behind on comments, guys, but yes, like I think it can be helpful for readers, but it is a system that can be easily abused. So after I saw this whole conversation, I was like, let me try writing a review for a book that needs content warnings where I discuss them in the text of the review instead of listing them at the bottom. I don't know if that's any better or not. But like I wrote a review for The Taking of Jake Livingston, which definitely has content warnings in it, but I like discussed them in the body of the review instead of listing them. Like, I don't know if that's a helpful thing as an option. I don't know.
It just depends so much person to person. I don't think there's a perfect way to do it. But with people, that one comment you just had about reviewers taking advantage and they can, use content warnings in different ways. I was looking back at one of the threads that Sylvia was talking about, and they were talking about like if we made it, even if there was like an outside thing or if it was more of a norm for like everybody had to list triggers for books, they were saying that some people may use that in like the negative to like just have a bunch of traumatic and like explicit content in their book so it could be like marketed as so. And it made me think of a book that I talked about a while ago where there were like so many things in the book and the author was like, she wrote a whole page about, I'm not giving you trigger warnings. This book is extremely triggering.
I remember that.
Yeah, like basically going on like a whole page of like,
she was like, I'm trying to trigger you snowflakes. Like,
yeah. And it was like, so people went through and read it and it was like it was like abuse, like sexual, like everything you could think of. It's like she tried to put as much like trauma triggering content in a book as possible to say, look at my explicit book. So like, I don't know how many people would do that, but I could see that, or as publishing does, taking something like they did Own Voices, or just turning, look at this mature book, some way they would manipulate like a rating to benefit them in a way and like take it away from like what it's actually supposed to be used as. I don't know. Publishing is shady. What are you gonna do?
Shady.
We can't have nice things.
No. Yes, shady books.
Oh man. Oh, I know people who do warn this, by the way. Emetophobia is how they'll label it. Yeah.
Actually.
I mean, I guess maybe if you had like a super sensitive, like sympathetic gag reflex, I don't know.
There are people who are really bothered by stuff. Well, like I'll mention things if there's like horror involving stuff with insects because it creeps the hell out of me. So like I'll be like,
oh, that's how I feel about fungi.
Ugh. Be like, that doesn't
I can feel it on me.
Have you read Mexican Gothic?
No, you told me, I mentioned that to you once and you were like, you should not read that book. And I was like, I appreciate that. I will not read it. So you gave me a very personalized content warning, which I appreciated.
No problem.
Yeah. But I also think that that's on it. Like I've seen a few people mentioning like they appreciate getting to know booktubers and like being able to take their content warnings. Cause I think that that's what a lot of it comes down to is like, if you can find reviewers who are, you at least know where they're calibrated, you can then like match your response to it. So I honestly think that's a big like route that is helpful to people, is to find reviewers who you like vibe with and you can go from there.
Yes.
There you go.
Great. Oh, there's a few people in here who are like grossed out by just hearing about it. So yeah, it's the same.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's the thing is like finding, but this is where I do think what you said is right, is that like finding reviewers and figuring out their style and the types of things they pick up on is important, because we all have different things that bother us. Like, I don't know that I would always think to mention that, but if there's insects, if there's fat phobia, if there's like, you know, like essay, like some stuff I'll call out. So it's interesting. I've seen a few people say this and I 100% agree. Actually, there's a lot, things bother me a lot more visually than in reading.
Yeah. Like reading something, I might be like, oh, but I'm not like, it doesn't like, but like seeing someone, I'm like, oh, no.
But you know what's so crazy? We don't do content warnings for comics or graphic novels at all.
Oh, that's interesting.
In the least bit. I have never seen, unless it's BookTube reading a graphic novel, you know.
I mean, I probably have.
Yeah. Unless it's people who, you know, like, you know, it's not their constant genre to choose from. But for the most part, like talking about like the comic community, graphic novel, ain't nobody got time for that. Nobody does that.
No
whatsoever. So which I find, and I say that.
Or some.
Go ahead, Jess.
Hold on. I was saying some things, I guess, and it depends on the person, like I wasn't aware of, like this may sound like dumb, but I only recently really kind of learned what fat phobia was and noticing it in books. So I would, you know, see people's review of something I had read and I'm like, oh, I didn't even pay attention to that or pick up on that. And like certain things, I think as we become more progressive or, you know, we learn things as a society that those things may change. But yeah, I would be like, where was that? That's fatphobic? And, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Adora, I see more like I get warnings for bad characterization, like especially over sexualization of women in comics is, you know, that's a whole different conversation. But as far as like what I see in terms of
this is interesting.
Now, not all of them though. That's not all
Oh.
of them. Like I have single issues sitting on the floor right here. There's no T or MA on them whatsoever. Like you walk into a comic shop, it's free game. You know what I'm saying? And that could too be by your wherever location you're at. But I know like DC Marvel, like nobody's putting a T or an MA on their comics from what I have seen thus far. And there is no, you know, there is no system in which I've seen comic book reviewers give content or trigger warnings. And I say that that's interesting because it's a visual medium.
Yeah.
You know, so it's even different types of readers perceive content warnings and trigger warnings differently. And comics can get just as grimy and nasty as a prose book. And I don't know. It's weird. I don't know if y'all have ever heard of people, this is kind of me, who have difficulty actually visualizing. Like when you read a book, people are like, oh yeah, I see the whole thing in my head. And there are those people like me who like, I can see a scene, but I can't see people's faces and stuff like that. It's very, very hard for me to do stuff like that.
Me too.
So I feel like even because I remember one time I had to do I was doing a book tour, and the video I had to do was it was for Ray Bearer, and it was like a casting, like who would I have as each character. That video stressed me out because I literally, when I read a book, I cannot see I can't see characters and stuff like that. It's very, very hard for me to do that. So
me neither.
I see them.
I can't. It takes a lot for me to do that, and I have to concentrate very, very hard to do that. So sometimes there are situations where I feel like content
this is what it's called, aphantasia.
Yes, it's so sometimes for me, content warnings and stuff like that, sometimes even that, like if it's an action type of thing happening and I would have to visualize it, it doesn't bother me as much because I can't see it.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And Ashley, I was literally just about to say that because I think part of why some things that people talk about as being triggering or content warnings that I don't even realize, it's because I'm the exact same way. Like I see the scene in my head, but I don't really see a lot of details. Like it's all a little fuzzy to me. And then if I think I'm coming up on something that's going to upset me, I have no problem sort of just like skimming through it. And like, I don't even really register it afterwards. Like if for instance, if there's going to be a scene with SA in it and I can tell that, usually I will just kind of skim through it to figure out where it's over because I just don't really want to read that. And then it doesn't really stick with me. So I forget, like I may forget by the end of that book that even happened because I personally just sort of like elided over.
Yeah. I feel like it feels like a very like drug induced or like I'm drunk. Like I can't really, it's like I have drunk goggles on. I can't really visualize it. So content warnings for me, and this is where I think we've already talked about, it's very personalized, where sometimes content warnings for me are not, I'm not going to pick up on it as much as something because I can't visualize it.
Yeah.
Whereas if I'm sitting down and I'm watching a movie, it's like, ooh.
Exactly. Then I can like,
yeah.
Ashley, I feel I feel like I'm one of the few people who doesn't fully see the movie. Like, because people talk about either reading the words or seeing the movie. And I feel like I'm in between with reading.
Yeah.
And I feel like we're a small, but, proud little group of us where it's like, I'm kind of somewhere in between. I don't fully relate to one or the other when people talk about that.
Oh, wow. This is intense.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Whoa.
So I think I can actually, it depends. Like I can, okay, so you know how people will talk about subvocalization and turning that off as like a way of reading faster? I can turn off like the specificity of the movie in my head to read faster, if that makes any sense. So like,
like it's like on fast forward.
Yeah. Like if I read it, like if I read a book more slowly and really like am immersed in it, I can see it pretty clearly. But I can also, like, if I'm just listening to it and not paying close attention, or if I'm like reading it more quickly, I can it's more vague, like, if that makes any sense. But like but there are books where I'm like, I see it and I'm like, oh my God, no.
Me too. I can, especially if the author is really good at describing the setting and the people, and then it becomes adapted. I'm so critical in adaptations because I have such a strong view of what it is in my head, and then I see it, I'm like, unacceptable. That is not what they're supposed to look like. That's not what this is supposed to be. But yeah, I can just be there in the setting. I see the people. Oh, it's just...
See, like, we've been playing I've been playing Dungeons and Dragons, and Bethany's in the group that I'm the DM, and like sometimes I'll be giving a description and I'm like, how are they supposed to figure this out? But they all, I think, see it more than I do, and I'm the one who like actually, you know, has the fucking thing right in front of me, so like I literally can see the visualization. So anyway, I'm glad that it's a problem.
That's so interesting. I hadn't even thought about that, but it's true, because like I do, like when you're describing stuff, I'm like, and sometimes I'll even like sketch out the room.
You're sitting there and you're like, okay, so that green jade figure on the left hand bookcase over 3 books down, and I'm like, how the fuck did she remember this? Like, I don't even remember this, and it's like on the page in front of me.
Yeah. Oh man, that's so funny. Yeah, there you go. Interesting. There are people talk about this. Oh yeah. Okay. See, I'm glad I'm not the only person. This is fair. I mean, this is why, like, there are books that I want to read more slowly, but I don't need it for everything. Like, I don't mind some books being kind of, I don't know.
Yeah. All this aphantasia and hyperphantasia are very interesting. I feel like I want to go take that test. Somebody mentioned.
So interesting.
Me too.
Smell it. Yeah, that's pretty fascinating. Wow. Now everybody's like commenting all about this. Don't have an inner voice. Oh, see, this is it's so interesting. Okay, so I don't know if you guys follow her, but Julie from Pages and Pens, like a year ago. So like a year ago, she realized that she has aphantasia. Like she doesn't like see anything in her head at all. And so she made all these videos about it, and it was so interesting.
That's how I first felt seeing Loki, because I was like, I read, but I don't think I see what other people see. It doesn't mean that I don't enjoy a book. But I like people like, I see this so vividly. And I'm like, you see what?
It's like, I feel like the way I would describe it is I definitely have a picture, like I have a scene in my head, but it's more on the level of like a Hanna-Barbera cartoon in terms of the level of detail, and not like an actual full, like in my mind, it's like there's a jungle and I'm like, okay, cool, jungle. Like there's like, you know, kind of just like a static backdrop. I'm not really like picturing like every single leaf, even if they were to describe it to me.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
And maybe it's why I read comics so much.
Maybe.
There you go.
Maybe.
Yeah.
This is kind of off topic, but I wonder if that relates to like stuff where I struggle, like something like Lord of the Rings, where it's so detailed, and I'm like picturing every single thing. And I get bogged down where other people are like, oh my God. I'm like, no, he just
so
telling me about all the trees. And my mind.
No, whereas like for me, I'm just like
vibe.
I'm just like, oh, okay, like the vibes. Like that's really what I'm getting from all the vibe.
No, same. Well,
and I mean, like, I can do close reading. I just don't do it like that's not my natural mode. Obviously, if you guys watch my recent Jane Eyre video, like I like close reading, but if I'm just reading for fun, I'm reading for vibes, not for.
See, this is why I would probably do it on audio, because it's easier for me, and it forces me to keep the pace up and just go with whatever my brain can put together as I'm listening.
That's how I think that's
part of
Fellowship of the Ring, because I was like, I'm going to be in this book forever, because the person is telling me everything.
Well, I mean,
is piecing together this landscape.
Yeah. Well, you've also got what's his fucking name? The
Tom Bombadil.
Bombadil, fucking Tom Bombadil.
Go away.
This is so interesting.
Yeah, I'm feeling valedated, Ashley.
Yeah.
I feel very validated right now.
Yeah.
Everybody is now having an identity crisis.
Lord of the Rings is worse on audio because you can't skip the 16 pages of tree description.
But you know who did a nice job of like random scenery? Tolstoy had like a 20-page description of this man cutting grass.
No,
Yes.
It was so beautiful.
Tilling the fields. Yeah.
It was so beautiful.
With his side.
Was it beautiful?
Yeah.
Oh gosh, Anna Karenina moments. Oh god,
No, I was reading that like, oh my god,
it was great.
Every blade of grass.
It was so poetic.
No. Anna Karenina took me a month to read. I liked some of it, but
yeah, it's
book.
not.
Beautiful book.
The writing's nice, not for me though.
Anna is the worst.
Martha has her RBF.
I like War and Peace, but Anna Karenina wasn't as much for me. But then again, I was still a fundy at that point, so I probably was very judgmental of the adultery and the fornication.
Oh yeah,
that's probably why I never read it. Like, I still haven't read it, but like that's probably why I originally didn't read it.
Heathen ways.
I mean, look,
you sound like my governor.
Mm-hmm. Oh Jesus!
Oh jeez!
Oh man, yeah. This is so interesting. Yeah, you know what? Like, I think it's been different as I've gotten older, but like when I was a kid, I think it's like having children myself, I have to split my attention more, and so I don't see. Maybe that's part of why I don't see things as clearly. But when I was younger, I would read and like people could startle me because I would be so lost in the world of like as if like it was like a movie in my head and I was in another world. And so I wouldn't notice anything happening around me. Which now I can't do that. I think I've like my brain has trained not to do that because I have like small children. So I usually have to always be like half.
So there's actually a term for this and it's unique to women's psychology and it is called constant holding. So women, and they think it's like an evolutionary adaptation for childbearing, where you always have, like the way it was described to me is that like on the periphery of your vision, even if you are fully concentrated on something else, there is a small part of your brain that has always got ears open for your child. And so like women, even if you have children, women, and this is part of why women like are good multitaskers because that's how our brain is set up is to always, and my mom told me, I brought this up to her and she was like, oh yeah, even though you've been out of the house for like, 15 years, I will wake up sometimes still in the middle of the night, like listening for
you. My baby.
Yeah.
I feel this for Nigel. I feel this. Yeah.
Me too. The cats. I'm like, actually that is true. I do like immediately hear it even if they're on the other end of the house. I hear them when they're crying in the night.
It is interesting. You know what? Because like the thing is too is my husband. Like things have to get more extreme for him to notice them. Like I will pick up on stuff like immediately. And I'm like, do you not hear that a fight is starting in the other room? And he's like, they're fine. They're playing. And I'm like, no, they're about to start fighting.
Yeah, exactly. Constant holding. It's a thing.
Look at that.
So interesting.
Look at us.
He knew. That's really funny.
Oh, all the moms in the chat are agreeing.
Yeah. Oh, jeez.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is so interesting.
Yep. We do.
Like, we kind of do. It's funny. Do that with your dog.
They're babies.
I do with exactly. They're my children. I listen for my cats. Which one time at 3 a.m, I heard one of them crying, and I came out, and her claw was caught in the curtain, and that's why she was crying. So it was good. I heard her. She was stuck.
It's real.
Yeah.
Yep.
Anyway, content warnings.
Same, Heather. Same. Oh man, this is so funny. Sorry. You know what? I will say he has admitted to me that he will occasionally wait because he's like, I know you're probably going to go do something about it anyway. So I'm like,
He's not a fool.
Wow.
oh man.
So content warnings are
Yes.
awful. I don't know. Where have we landed on this?
That
I mean, yeah. I mean, I think they're valuable for readers, but I think, this probably should not be an externally imposed, there shouldn't be an externally imposed system of probably for content warnings because of these concerns. And I do think too, on the side of readers, this is probably why it's valuable to get to know specific reviewers, because if you think about like these people, for instance, who are throwing in all these random content warnings that don't even exist in books by authors of color, like that is only really an issue if you're trusting every review you see, if that makes any sense. And this is why maybe the recommendation then is like, get to know specific reviewers who you do trust and don't, I don't know.
And I think also just, I'm trying to think through what I actually do in real life on books. If I see a review and it mentions like, I don't know, like, they say something to the effect of like major warning for sexual assault, I'll go through and I'll kind of read other reviews alongside it. And if I'm consistently seeing people bring up like, oh God, like, yeah, like strap in, there's a scene, then that kind of lets me know like, okay, this is definitely something I need to be aware of going into this book, because it's clear a lot of people had that as a takeaway. Whereas if it's only one review that mentions it, that maybe gives you an indication possibly that it might be there, but maybe it's not like on the more graphic end or not as big of an element in the book or whatever. Like, I think you can get some context too just from seeing like kind of a consensus emerge about a book and how many readers found a certain element to be a problem.
Yeah. With Storygraph, do you think, since if y'all saw the thread, there were comparisons. I think the biggest one was like 50 Shades of Grey had like one content warning versus what was another book? It was
Abuse.
50 Shades of Grey just had a content warning for sexual content, and then against their Kindred by Octavia Butler is like,
oh my God,
so long with all the content. So do you think there's always going to be people who obviously go after marginalized creators to try to bring down their content? Do you think that it's good for Storygraph to keep the content warning feature on their site?
I personally think that it's too much.
Yeah.
I think it's too much because people already, just from watching that thread and looking at some of the things that the authors have.
Can't see it. It's like these are just for Kindred alone. And then 50 Shades of Grey had one.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even for an abusive partner?
No. It was sexual content.
And not the straight abuse. No. For me, I think it opens up the floodgates for an abuse of a system. And I think it's too open to interpretation. Having that minor, moderate, severe, whatever the 3 tiers are for their content warnings. And this is not ragging, because Sylvia was saying the same thing. It's not trying to rag on Storygraph, because it is an alternative to Goodreads for those who are searching for that alternative. But it's also being transparent and knowing that by creating such a complex content warning system, it has created the floodgates for an abuse of a system where people are, I mean, we see what people do on Goodreads alone. We make fun of it. Like, I've done a video where I reacted to 1-star reviews of my favorite books, or 1-star reviews of books that I gave 5 stars, and people abuse Goodreads, and Goodreads doesn't even have an open area for that abuse. So if it's happening on that platform, you should definitely expect for the same abuse and it's easier to create that level of abuse. And once again, by creating those tags of things that may not even exist, then you're pushing for individuals to not want to pick up this book when these specific content or trigger warnings may not even exist. Right. So that's super dangerous.
Yeah. Well, here's
like an administrative nightmare for them, right?
Oh yeah.
That's what I would think.
So the thing with Storygraph, and like this is giving more real reasons to the petty reasons I've stuck with Goodreads. So the petty reason I've stuck with Goodreads is I like the social media dynamic of it, and I like being in the top 100 reviewers of America.
I'm done.
I'm done. He's like, I stay with Goodreads for the clout.
For the clout.
Look, I mean,
for the prestige.
If we're being real, it's kind of true.
That's okay.
Look, it's true. But here's the thing though, is that system, while like I appreciate that Storygraph is trying to sort of like democratize things where, you know, there's no rankings, you don't like see specific people, it's all in a stream, which I actually also don't like. I like to see what my friends thought about books, and I like seeing what I don't know. So I don't love it as like a system, but I get what they're trying to do where it's not so structured that way. But the problem then becomes that if there are trusted reviewers who have a history of like doing solid reviews or people that you want to follow, like you can't see what they said or thought without specifically going and seeking them out. It makes it a lot more difficult. And so it's like trying to assume that just like on aggregate, you're going to get a good idea of how a book is, but like whether that's accurate in book reviewing specifically, I don't know. Like, I don't know if I don't know. Yeah.
I just feel like it's an administrative nightmare, I think, for Storygraph. Like, I think you're just opening. Yeah, it just seems to me they're opening up an entire like avenue of abuse, and therefore somebody's going to have some level of moderation on it. But like, how are you going to? I mean, Goodreads has proven that moderation is needed and difficult. Oh Jesus, Aaron, what a bleak, what a dystopian statement.
I mean, it
Jesus,
with
everything. I know. But yeah, I mean, I stay with Goodreads because I actually do like seeing my friends' ratings at the top. Like, I do appreciate that aspect, and I'm just too lazy. Like, I don't want to have to move off of Goodreads at this point. It's the same reason why, like, even though I know Amazon is like, you know, the Voldemort of book retailing, I'm so entrenched on Kindle at this point. Like, I have thousands of Kindle ebooks, and I just don't see myself realistically moving off of it. So I don't know.
Yeah. I saw a tweet or someone liked Storygraph that I guess they've updated it where the author approves the content warnings, but still that is still a lot for an author. Do this?
Yeah. It sounds like they just did this.
Did they just do this?
So yeah, it said 3 days ago we've launched author approved content warning. So I'm assuming that before they weren't author approved.
No,
but then that still means as an author that you have to.
But also that means, right, that like authors that don't like content warnings or think that there shouldn't have them, like that one author, like they just will say nope.
Yeah.
I mean, so like I don't know that that's a good system either.
There's just like no perfect.
Nothing's perfect
system. And I don't.
Yeah, this is interesting, Brittany. That their content warnings for fanfic. It's you know, like authors need to create them, but it's a whole different thing. So the stats thing is cool.
I do like that, but.
Yeah, I have my own nerdy spreadsheet. I
know, me too. Me too. I do love, but I mean, I like that they make it easy. I mean, it's kind of fun.
Yeah, no, I'm not trying to rag on Storygraph because I think I totally get why people would enjoy it.
Yeah,
I'm happy.
I just think I'm sitting here thinking as like a project manager / like person who's had to deal with lawyers, like just the administration piece. I'm like, oh, that sounds like something that would not be fun to deal with long term.
Oh, okay. Someone's saying that
my nerves.
they're saying that the authors don't approve them. It's just that authors can include warnings now as well. Okay. Okay, that makes sense. I think part of it depends on what you want, because I do think that there are people who don't want the social aspect of Goodreads. So like if you just want a platform to get recommended books, get your stats, and make your reviews and not have to like interact with other people, then like Storygraph is probably a great platform for you. It just depends on whether you want it to be a social media site. Like I think for what they're content warning issue aside, like I think for what they're doing, like it's, you know, it's good. I just can't keep up with both, and like it doesn't do some of the things that I specifically like from Goodreads. But I know people who love it as a platform, which is great, you know.
Yeah, Deshauna is obsessed with Storygraph.
Bree is obsessed with Storygraph too.
Yeah.
Yes. Not for me, but
just
I just
same. I mean,
True. Yeah. I just wish there was a way to prevent people weaponizing them against
it's hard.
Marginalized creators, but that's the world we live in, where people take everything, even a freaking book, to use it as an attack against somebody. So
really, because my lipstick was weaponized against me today.
Oh my gosh. Like, how does somebody have time to do to type
what
that
the hell is wrong with people?
Did you see what I responded, Ashley? Because like, I'm telling you, that is 100% jealousy. Like, I was like, oh no, this is like a pasty ass white woman who's jealous that like, I can't get away with wearing bright colors on the daily. Like, you know what I mean? That's, that was bullshit.
Like, what if she deleted the comment because people started commenting under it and was like, was this really necessary? Like,
oh man.
But people have the energy to type out.
On a keyboard, we wasted 30 seconds of your life that you will never get back.
There was a lady who started going through every one of my videos and commenting on how much she did or did not like my earrings. Like literally, it was like, okay, yeah, these are good. Like, I like these, or like, those are not flattering, or like, those don't suit your, like, and I'm telling you, like, literally, like, this was like her main comment. And so eventually I hit her because I was just like, I just don't need someone evaluating. Like, I didn't ask for a scale of 1 to 10 on my earring choice. I mean, well, I guess I should, I don't know if you guys can see it. I hope everybody enjoys
very
today's
nice
choice. These are new, so she hasn't evaluated them yet.
maybe this was like her first step before saying, hey, by the way, I sell earrings.
I don't know. She was like an older lady, and I wonder if she thought she was providing, like, I've noticed this, that a lot of like some of my like older viewers sometimes I think are providing constructive criticism, but I'm like, nobody asked you. Nobody asked you.
So much time.
Oh no.
All get that one.
Okay, you got an oh shoot, I missed it. You got an 8 out of 10.
Okay, that's a passing grade. That's great.
Pretty good.
Thank you.
That's pretty good.
Thanks, Book Terror. I appreciate.
There you go.
I had one with the
oh no. Stephanie, no, that was not you. I saw that. That's fine. I don't mind if people occasionally are like, yes, I love that. That's fine. But I'm talking like literally when I went into the creator studio, it was like 3 years ago videos. Like clearly she was on a binge and like this was her comment.
I had
and it was like 50 of them.
Who found me through that AAVE video. And she went back to leave me an insult on every single video that she watched. One where I was reacting to the 100 books. Read C's 100 books that we should read before we die.
Oh, yeah,
She was like, I thought librarians were supposed to be educated. And I said, oh, let me delete you before I drag you up and down.
Not one, 2 master's degrees. So I'm good.
The comments that I've been getting lately I've been doing better. But
Beth,
the comments
you are
that I've
great.
been getting lately are not helping.
Oh man, Beth, you are great. You are definitely not one of them. So,
no.
Yeah, no, not at all. Oh my goodness.
I enjoy it when you drag people though, Ashley. So it's probably not good. I'm like the little devil on your shoulder being like, do it. Like,
listen, when I put that screenshot on Twitter and I was like, I really want to finish them, people in the comments were like, go for it, do it. And I was like, y'all are not helping. I'm supposed to be doing better.
It's so hard. Some people make it so hard. I have someone,
Thank you.
and I see him in multiple people's videos, and I feel like I've hidden him from channel, but somehow he just keeps popping up. And under some videos, he'll say something nice, but then sometimes he was like, you're a social justice warrior. You're definitely in cancel culture. Like, and I've seen him under multiple, and my last time I'm like, what are you still doing here? You always have something to say. Like, you obviously don't like my content. Like, leave me alone.
Oh my God. You know what? I finally put SJW as a blocked word on my channel.
I have that as a blocked word now for me too.
Because like, it never goes in a positive comment. Like, I never want to see the comments that have it in it.
No.
I was like,
People call me a
never
JW whenever they're trying to like come for me, and I'm like,
wow.
I don't see either of those things as an insult. So like, I don't think you're doing what you think you're doing right now.
No, I know.
I don't know what to tell you.
I'm like, well, yes, thank you, but also go away. Like, I mean, that's basically like, I don't
Literally, move on, please. There's so many other people on this platform. Go find your people. Leave me alone.
Coco, listen.
Look, is it Matt Cole? Because he's in there
Matt, are you present?
Matt Cole, right here.
Yes,
man.
I know that avatar. Yes, and I can never figure out if he's insulting me or not. Like, I can't tell.
It's so weird.
The other thing is, I do get like, he's one that I'd kind of in my mind thought that potentially he has some sort of like social awkward. There's some people who I wonder if like they may not have like full social awareness. So like I don't know. I always think of that too. I'm like, I wonder, if they just don't really know how to like comment on other people's videos. I don't know.
Yeah, you got your own.
Alexa,
like, well,
I'm sorry.
Watching. Thank you for the engagement. Thank you for the views. But gosh.
Yeah.
Oof.
Oh my God.
Gross.
That's so weird.
Also,
I do have like, I would say I get at least 1 or 2 men a week who are trying to date me. And I'm just like, if we could have that in my real life and like not this way, I would be sad. But like,
no. You don't want it in your real life either.
You know what?
Not in this panorama, but
like, okay, I mean, it's kind of sad that this is true, but ever since I started including photos of my family with my husband in my intro, like, number of creepy guys in my comments has like plummeted.
Okay. Well, can I get a photo shoot with your husband, maybe? And like, we'll just use that as like,
we can be sister wives. Is that like?
Yeah, exactly.
I love this. Modern.
Yeah.
No. My job is enough.
Nope.
Last week was last week was enough.
Oh, no.
With the creep factors.
Ashley's got a therapy session for.
Listen. I thought this guy was trying to like, because he was slick. He was real slick. He's like, "How long you had your hair locked?" He had locks too, so I was like, "Oh yeah, I've been locked for a little over a year." Then he tried to slide in real quick. Nah, I mean, you look good. You got a man? I said, "Sir, I'm at work."
Sir, this is a library.
This is a library. I'm just saying, if you got a man. I said, "Yes, sir, I do. I'm engaged." He said, "Man, well, I hope he messes up because I'm in love."
Okay. When people say that, doesn't that? I also like. I'm like, what are you gonna do? Like when they're like, "Oh, if you didn't have a boyfriend, if you didn't have, I would," and I'm like, "We would what? What would you do? You gonna fuck my life up like this? Like, I think, sir, I see you in your khakis. Like, I don't think you're doing anything."
Okay, I have had this happen on Goodreads also. I don't know.
All the time on Goodreads. Goodreads is not Tinder.
I'm always like,
the book is Tinder.
Although, you know what? I haven't had it on Goodreads since I changed my profile pic to my logo. I don't have a personal picture on my Goodreads anymore, and I don't get it anymore.
I always hear people saying these things, and I'm like, I know I look like a troll most of the time, but nobody is coming into my DMs on Goodreads or Instagram, and I'm offended.
They know. They know.
Offended.
Just kidding.
Blessings.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
And it's like, I see where they're going, because it's like, okay, I like books, you like books. Like, I can see the thought pattern, but
also,
it's like,
it's not a dating
this is a
website.
like, I don't know. Yeah, it's just like, this is not
No.
the time.
Nor the place.
Yeah, exactly. Anthony can be the booktube husband. You can just
He'll be like,
Just pass them around. Just a picture.
Just Photoshop yourself in the photo.
Yeah, exactly. He's such a nice guy. He just looks so nice. So it'll be great. Like, he looks good with everyone.
I don't think
a
I'll
great
book community. It'll be like, oh
then
my God,
somebody's
these
gonna be
booktubers have
like,
the same husband.
Right.
and then
right.
someone's gonna like send this around to his like, boss at the university, and they'll be like, what?
Well, maybe we can just get we can get some stock images of the various booktube husbands, so like Andrew can have like
Right.
I'll
and
Go
we can
ahead.
just
We can use
post.
theirs
No.
too.
Yeah. We'll just
No.
we'll have them do some stock images, and we can just Photoshop Canva us in front of them.
Yeah, just sing is our back.
man. I'm waiting for
Better
that
watch out.
sugar daddy to come through. That's it. Like all the rest,
Right? Where are they?
Listen,
I don't
feel like
know.
all of mine happens in real life at work, and I don't know why. Like
This is true.
last week,
I mean,
it was money was involved. I got a
Ooh.
white envelope for you. No, sir.
An envelope.
no, thank
No,
I'm
you.
gonna like slide that across the desk and then leave, please.
No, sir. I'm okay. No, sir. I'm good. You keep your coins to yourself. Yeah.
Okay, look, I cannot tell you, and I don't know if it's because I live in New York City or whatever, but like the number of times that I have had random men when I'm in Barnes and Noble coming up and trying to talk to me, and I'm like, sir, I am looking at books on this table. I am here shopping for books. I am not here.
I am more open to that. Like, to me, that's a meet cute. Like, now, Ashley, I get it at the library. That's your work. Like, that's not the time. But like, if I'm in the library, like, okay, if I was at the bookstore and I was like, looking at an isolated closed circle mystery, and a certain gentleman came and like struck up a conversation about it, like, I might be into that. But like on Goodreads, no. What are you gonna do on, like, sir, you live in Milwaukee, like,
Mark,
what are we doing?
Mark, have you seen that thing that's been circling around where it's a picture of Barnes and Noble and the caption is ladies, a man takes you here on a surprise date, tell me what happens next? I posted on
Anything
Facebook
he wants. That's the answer to that.
I said, let me tell you something. My answer, not appropriate for Facebook. Okay?
Yeah, exactly.
All
That's
right.
exactly right. I'm like, that's a date.
There you go.
That's a
Alexa,
date.
you just need to come to New York. People are more into
Apparently.
curvy ladies over here. Seems
no,
it's
Stephanie.
I'm
Look at Stephanie's.
saying. What? Oh no! What is
Mar reaches pride.
to write this like fanfic, Mara?
Continue the story, please.
Stephanie, you should finish the story and like post the fanfic. That would be amazing.
Let's
You
put
could
this
do the
energy
whole
out into
thing,
the
like-
universe, Stephanie.
Oh my god. Well, you know what? Remember Cindy read that thing of the fanfic about her, and if somebody wrote this, you could like read it on your channel. It would
I mean, if Ruby Dixon wrote me into Ice Planet Barbarians, like 100%. I do feel like she's prepared me if I'm ever abducted by aliens to be open to love.
You're ready.
I'm ready.
Yeah. I mean, hey. Like hopefully you end up with the right aliens.
That's the thing. You gotta make sure you get the dumb cinnamon rolls, not
Exactly.
Not Walmart. Not Walmart. No, boo. We got to pick a different store. Not Walmart.
I'm okay if it's like a Lowe's. I'm open to that, or like a local nursery.
Yeah, not Walmart.
But not Walmart.
Not a Walmart. Just say
I
go to
watched someone
Walmart.
steal a bike from Walmart last week as well.
Oh, this is really cute.
100%. Unless it's a
so
Ayn
sweet.
Rand book, then that's a quick nope for me.
Yeah.
But
You know what?
No,
when we
that's
were
cute.
dating, my husband actually read a book that I suggested to him, and he is not a big reader. So I'm like, he was like really trying to.
true love. Yeah, he was going
True
for
love.
it.
He was a keeper,
Aw.
you know.
He was bringing his A game.
Cute.
That's why he's going to be the BookTube stock photo husband.
This
He is, and he is like, you know,
Target.
Target.
A little better,
Yes,
a little
there
better.
you go.
This makes me think of the hot dudes or hot guys reading NYC account on Instagram, where it's like pictures of hot dudes reading on like Subway in New York City. I'm like,
yeah.
we're met with a book.
You know what? It looks. It
Yes.
is the thing.
Send this to
So many
me.
people read in.
Send me the link.
Read in public.
Oh, thank
here.
you.
Y'all just need. Yeah, everybody should just come to
To New York City.
and
Yeah, I'll
find
just
you-
come.
We'll find you some literate men.
I like that Bree's willing to up her game to go to Maynard's because the farmer's got the corn. Oh. Love it.
Oh, I love it.
Oh,
love it. I love it. Look,
That's cute.
Mara,
telling
it
you.
will happen for us.
It will. We
It
gotta.
will.
I don't know. I saw a TikTok saying you should go linger in the coffee area at Lowe's because that's where all the like builders with money hang out. And I'm like, maybe. I don't know.
All right.
I could get. I have a lot of things I need done around the house. I wouldn't be mad at that.
That would be smart.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, true love.
It's a keeper.
If you take me to
Okay,
if
we
you take me
just-
to Barnes and
you know
Nobles
what?
and say buy whatever you want, like
I'm in love.
done. Like
What
you
are
let
you
me
doing
know.
next?
Yeah, exactly.
Some
I'm telling you,
crazy
New
things.
York's a good place for it. But hey, you know, we just celebrated our 10-year anniversary this last week.
Oh,
Love. Happy anniversary.
Just how long have you guys been together?
A while. I don't know. Well, we've been legally married. Well, we've been married for 2 years, but together for almost 8.
oh wow.
Wow.
That's
A long
amazing.
time.
That is a
Yeah,
long
it
time.
goes-
That's great.
Look, it goes fast. Yeah, it's
Well, I say it, I'm like, oh God,
mm-hmm.
so strange. Yes,
Yep.
yes.
Oh. Oh, that's cute.
Aw.
I love it.
That is cute.
I love it. Oh no.
Uh-oh.
Sorry. That's a better. Thank you. Oh no. Oh goodness. Isabella. Yikes. Yeah, no. Whew.
No.
21 years.
21 years?
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Wow.
Congrats.
21.
That's amazing.
21.
This
If I
is-
don't
just
die
am amazed
before I
that you
get to do
people-
that, that'd be nice, you know?
I hit the like 4-month mark, and I'm like, I don't know about this. Like, so you people who are making it like years, I'm like, wow, that's amazing.
Really? For me, it's like 30. It's like a 30-day trial. And most don't make it
I'm
past
like,
30 days.
I don't know.
Like,
I
can you
don't
send
know
it
if I'm
back?
gonna have to pay $4.99 a month for this anymore. Like, the free
Yeah,
trial
the
is
30-day
enough.
free
Like,
trial,
yeah, exactly.
it usually,
Oh,
no,
man.
literally.
This is
I
so
have
sweet,
not
by the
had
way.
anybody make it past a 30-day trial in a very long time.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
ain't the
Wow.
real ones.
Wow. This is very sweet.
That is
Oh,
really
that
sweet.
is very sweet.
Very sweet.
Precious.
Oh.
We got a range of wholesome to non-wholesome content.
I know. We have range, guys.
Yeah.
I love it. Oh, congratulations.
Oh,
That's exciting.
Congrats.
Congrats.
Oh, and
Y'all are
Jessica,
making me
congrats.
sappy, and I'm drinking
You know
wine.
what?
This is not a
17
good mix.
years. Like, this is
Yeah.
a long time
Cheers.
relationship.
I mean, my dog turned 17 this week.
That's the kind of commitment. I mean, I committed to my
Hey,
cats.
hey.
That's about all I got.
Yeah, 17. I hope Nigel's with me for that long.
I hope so. I hope my kitties. I like literally will start crying on TikTok when I see like old pet
Oh, I can't.
stories. My cats are literally 18 months old, and I'm like, what happens when
Yes.
the time comes? Like, I don't know. Oh,
Y'all are giving me hope.
Yeah. Oh, I love this.
Hope alive. It's
really
We got 20
living in the
years,
South.
14 years.
well,
Yeah.
You know where, but Jess, you know where I live.
16 years together, 14
Ain't
years
much hope,
married.
honey.
somebody might move there and
Go,
they might move
Alexa.
there.
Oh, kitty,
I got
hold
to get up
on.
out of here if I want
Alexa has new kittens and they're real cute. Go look at them on Instagram. They
Going
made
on
me smile.
31 years. Oh my goodness.
Whoa.
Y'all have got some timetables.
Wow.
Impressive.
Beth, we'll have to get you a date.
A fine single uncle.
Love it.
Okay, Beth.
Love it. I love it. Yes.
I love
Oh,
this.
man.
Oh.
Wow. Look at all of this. It's amazing. That's cool.
We should do booktube love
Because
stories.
you were reading a book about me. Okay? All right. That's
I know. There's a lot of librarian romances, Ashley. I'm just saying they can't all be coming from nowhere. So
I'm gonna have
hoping
my
for you
librarian
to meet
meet, and I'm gonna
Yes,
tell
I
you
want
all
you to
about
meet
it.
another librarian. I want you to like meet at like a librarians conference, and then maybe
Oh,
that like maybe you'll be like rivals at first for a position, but then you'll realize that there's a way for both of you to achieve your career goals,
I
but
wanna
also
read this
get it
book.
on. And
That would be
he's
so cool.
he's gonna be a good dad to your baby girl. Like this is I'm putting this out. in the
Mara,
universe
get your
for you.
writing, please.
I
Yeah.
love it. I love it. Have you actually, okay, this reminds me of, I read a book. What was it even called? There was like a romance I read last year that was about, the guy was a children's librarian, and the heroine
by Cherish Reed.
Yes, by Cherish Reed.
Yes.
And the heroine was a Black professor. It was like an interracial
Yes.
romance. And she was trying to work with him on like an internship programs for her students. And they like it. If you haven't read this, have you not? You ever heard?
And I think he was raising his niece, and she was biracial. Did she?
Yes.
And that was sweet.
Yes.
It was really sweet. It was cute.
It was very sweet.
Look at y'all writing my future love story.
Yeah. I'm putting it out in the universe for you, Ashley, I believe. Hearts on Hold, that's what it was called, yes.
I just got
Hearts on Hold.
I was like, I just requested that.
I feel like Ashley already hates the man Mara is talking about and doesn't want to admit he's fine.
But listen, I talk a lot of trash. If I'm attracted to a man, I talk a lot of trash. I really do.
So this is going to be a hate to love.
It's going to be a hate to love.
Oh my God.
Hey.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no, you should read this. It's good. It's a good. I feel like, yeah, you should.
It was cute.
You could do like a whole thing on like librarian romances.
I was going to say, you should do a whole vlog of like
video. That would
Okay,
be fun.
There's Cunnilingus Gabe from Victoria Doll, who's a librarian.
Wait, who?
He's referred to in Romancelandia as Cunnilingus Gabe because his like superpower is
Wow.
yeah, and he's a librarian.
Okay,
so you could read that. You could read I'm sorry, Bethany, did we say that word on your channel? I should have asked.
It's fine. It's fine.
Cunning linguistics Gabe.
Oh wow.
Oh
Wow.
man, I feel like live streams are more lax than other videos, especially this far into a live stream.
That's
I feel
true.
like
That's true.
people who are
It's
here
by
are
Victoria
here.
Doll.
Oh man.
Anyway,
I love
there's
it.
a lot of. There's also Olivia Dade has a whole series about librarians. So
Ashley, I see
this is a
reading
vlog. I
in
feel
your
like this is a
future,
romance
right?
reading
Love
vlog
to
in
read
your
a vlog.
future.
I listen. Okay.
You and I will do a
Don't
TBR swap, and I'll just send you all librarian romances and force you to read them.
Has anyone done a reading vlog based off of Tinder?
He lives in Wyoming.
Anybody?
I don't think
No, I haven't seen that.
Oh, wait, a reading vlog off of Tinder?
Based
Tinder
on
chooses
Tinder.
my TBR.
No.
No,
Do it, girl.
Do it.
I'm low-key trying to make that happen right now.
Please. I love
People
it.
don't read.
Like Book Talk chooses
I know.
my PR, but
So
not
when I was last on the dating apps, my username was a reference to a book. And like the number of men who were just like, huh? What? and I was like, God, the education system in this country has failed. Has failed to produce any men who read, apparently.
I intentionally put my question as, tell me about your passion in the last book that you've read. And I've gotten some very interesting responses from individuals.
Are
So
they
that
all
may
like
happen.
Ayn Rand and Bill O'Reilly?
Yeah, so sheesh. Like all these, and I'm not opposed to self-help, but like all these how to be a millionaire. I'm like, y'all don't read anything else? Like nothing
Maybe
else?
you should specify fiction.
I think I'm gonna go back and change that question. And then we can make the Tinder chooses my TBR thing a real thing.
That would be fun.
What if I actually end up finding someone in the process?
Then that
would be amazing.
It's going to become a movie is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, God.
No.
Maybe I picked the wrong bookish reference. I don't know.
No.
If I had named myself like the Fountainhead something, maybe I would have had more luck. I don't know.
I have my career as a librarian, y'all, and let me tell you, the amount of comments that I've gotten, like, oh my God, you're like every man's fantasy. Like, I'm not a kink. Like, stop.
Yeah.
I mean, if you get the glasses and like a pencil skirt, you're good to go.
Alexa, I hope this works out because that sounds awesome.
Sending you good energy on that.
Oh,
I've heard dating in LA is like brutal.
Does not sound pleasant.
I mean, I met my husband in LA, but also like both of us were bad at dating and we were kind of happened.
That's what I need. I need a dating app for other people who are bad at dating. That would be great.
Mara,
is there one of those?
Are you on to something?
My $1 billion idea. I mean, look for my IPO in 4 years, guys.
I'm like an outlier because like we met at church. So, like,
I don't think I could meet a husband for myself at church at this point in my life.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Both of us have kind of like grown much more liberal than we were when we met, but which I guess we've done it together. So
that's good.
I'm seeing a lot of support for this. Okay, well maybe I'll try to get that'll be my take on the dating app. Are you hopelessly awkward? Do you hate making small talk and just want to get to the point and cut through the bullshit?
I feel like there would be an audience for that. I mean,
there is because
a lot of people would find it useful.
You get tired of the, hey, how are you doing?
I'm good. Like, what do you say next?
Right. What are you doing today? Working. Do you have a job?
Yeah.
Farming or church.
Farming or church.
Exactly. I need to get on Farmers Only. Yeah. I feel like I've got a nice like farm related bill. I feel like
Heather, I feel like you and I have a lot in common in some ways.
All of these backstories. I need
maybe if I went to like a Wiccan church.
Or like a Unitarian church. Perhaps.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of like Richard Dawkins fanboys there.
Yeah, that's fair.
That's for me.
I do feel like they're a little too far.
I feel like I could get down with like a warlock at a Wiccan church. I don't know.
You know. Maybe you could like
Ashley, do you know any friendly warlocks who
I live in the deep south. What do you think? They ban any books with magic here for fun.
I know. Well, Nashville, I feel like there's more of this.
Oh my God, is this Eve Brown? Randy over.
Oh no. Oh. Yeah.
I know. But if I had married somebody I met at church, I would be living a very different life. So,
I mean, you never know. Like
you're like a 1 in 100 kind of story.
Yeah, we're probably unusual because we met at like a super conservative evangelical church, and like since have gone.
Yeah.
I'm thinking far.
Like you're glad you made progress.
Oh, a Ren Fair. That's a good idea, Catherine.
Oh yeah, that'd be fun.
Yeah.
playing video games online.
There you go.
At least in the middle of nowhere, Ohio. Sorry. At least in the middle of nowhere, Ohio, all of the warlocks are into other warlocks. Yeah, that's a good point.
That's a fair problem. Oh no.
Well, the thing is, there's been a resurgence of like Appalachian magic users in Tennessee. So like I'm feeling like but I'm just thinking I could vibe with somebody who is into that. That seems like fun. I like crystals. I could be supportive of that.
I like crystals.
They're pretty. I can get down with that. Like I can build some little like twig figures to help with this.
Shauna, I think this is a great idea. Maybe you should found an actual Church of Murderbot, Mara, and like see who you can.
I just feel like there would be a power differential if I'm the high priestess of the good news of Murderbot.
Fair point.
I just feel like that's setting myself up to be spiritually abusive to a partner, and
that
is a
very good point. Maybe they could be the head of a church plant.
It'll be called like Crossroads. Like what are all those church plants called?
But it needs to be more like science fiction-y, you know?
Yeah.
Crosswires.
Isn't that specific?
Oh man.
There used to be a thing called techno-pagan. That is so interesting. Hey, yeah, I guess.
Just for the tax bennies, I love it. They do. I mean, we've gutted the IRS so that they don't audit anybody except for poor people anymore. So, you know, I can do whatever I want.
Truly. Buy a jet, write it off.
Hey, Jessica, she's an ordained minister. Look,
do you have any contacts in the Nashville area? Decent looking men. I said Crossroads, but I feel like Crossroads would be is the right answer.
Nice Planet Barbarians version.
Mm-hmm.
Oh Lord. Yay! Oh good, they're wonderful.
Good.
Okay, I'm glad we can entertain you. Well,
Jess is like, I can't believe I stayed up for this. Jess is like, it is
like, what did I do? You
it's
told me
3:30 in the morning.
about content warning.
No, this is great. Every time I've watched, like, especially you three together in a live stream at This Is a Mark, I always watch them the next morning and I'm cackling like, how did we get here? So now I get to be part of it. Okay.
It's true.
It was worth it.
I don't know what it is because you're right. Like the three of us specifically, like it always ends up
just
taking a turn.
I don't know.
It does. It goes all the way left around this time mark. Yeah. Yeah.
It's so funny. Oh my goodness.
So cute. Sorry.
Yikes.
Dad is looking at me like, what are you doing?
Yikes. Oh, yes.
These are my favorite things to put on, those like thunderstorms.
Yeah, Jess has a beautiful view of an idyllic forest.
Yeah.
Nice patio.
My bed.
And look at the beautiful sunshine at 3 a.m.
Yeah, perfect lighting.
Is that snow?
Yeah.
No,
is it rain?
Oh, it's rain.
Oh no.
It is
It is
soothing,
very
I agree.
soothing. It is.
Yeah.
This is true. This is true. Oh Lord have mercy. Yep.
Was that the is his name Ken Ham? That
Ooh.
sounds right.
Yeah, you know what? When I was in middle school, I went to like an evangelical Christian school, and my 6th grade teacher took us to a creationism conference. So,
Yeah. Oh, I was only
I have
taught
had all
creationism
that
in school.
indoctrination. Like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Yeah.
So fun fact, when I was in 10th grade, 11th grade, we had chapel at our school every week, and they booked somebody for the elementary school, and then it got canceled. So they were like, well, we'll just have them be at the high school. And it was all creationist songs, but like aimed at 10-year-olds. So the first one was called I'm a KID, not a monkey. And and it's like they're in like these science, like the like lab coats and stuff, and they're like playing a keyboard, and like it's like I'm a KID, not a monkey, and we're all looking at her like, what is going on? And then out of the from the background of this science set, all of a sudden this gigantic inflatable monkey appeared and started dancing. It was memorable.
Wow.
There was trauma bonding among all of us.
I'm glad I did not go to a religious school.
Really? My mother had me
missing
confused.
out.
My mother had me going to a Nation of Islam school at first, and then I got sent to a Christian school after.
Those are some like.
You want to talk about confused?
In South Carolina, there was a Nation of Islam,
right?
No, I was going to school in Brooklyn.
Oh, okay. That.
Oh yeah,
Mhm.
that makes a lot more sense.
Makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a Nation of Islam school in
That's a
Brooklyn.
big change.
You know,
And
I
we
taught
went
you some
to
abstract
huge
thinking
change.
skills because those are very different messages to parse out as an 8-year-old.
The trauma, okay? The trauma.
Wow.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, the
my
trauma
gosh.
bonding. It's
Yeah, private Christian school. Oh man, yeah, it was a
Wow.
fun
time.
fact. 80% of the girls at our school had eating disorders.
Wow.
Woo,
Yeah.
Jesus.
Turns
I
out when you teach
went
girls
to-
that their bodies are evil centers of lust, makes them not feel great about
Shockingly.
them and try to
How
punish
dare
themselves.
they?
Yeah,
tempt us.
we had like huge numbers of eating disorders at the university I went to for undergrad, and it was also like a religious university. So it's interesting in hindsight.
Yeah. Well, you know,
we had
you can
we had to sign a
hide your
covenant.
lack of eating under the guise of fasting. So
Oh.
Yep.
I'm glad
Yeah.
I did none of that. None of
yeah.
No, it was
1 out of
interesting.
5 stars would not recommend.
That was the school showed an STI. How is that even? That's
What?
how a girl
How
was
did they
expelled from
know?
my Catholic school because the school found out she had an STI.
How you?
Are they running checks on people on a monthly basis? How
That's
do you even know?
crazy. That's
Well,
wild.
I had a friend in college because, like I said, we had to sign a covenant, which included all these things like not having sex if we weren't married and like not drinking and stuff. And I had a friend who got pregnant and because she kept the baby, she got kicked out.
That's don't even get me started on that entire hypocrisy scenario. That
Wow. These are some experiences. I always went to like public school, and then my parents didn't make me start going to church till like 10th grade, which is so annoying.
oh, that's way too
my
late to
Sundays
indoctrinate
free
you.
before then. And so I mean, I had my little time of like being about it, and then was like, nah, after I got free. But
Mhm.
oh gosh.
Yeah, we haven't even gotten into. Yeah, I could give you a whole rundown of our sex education and
In
years of
5 minutes.
therapy we've been on. Yeah,
Cool,
years
that'll
of
be
therapy I've needed to
fine.
unpack all of that.
Yeah, I ended up going to public school in like later on, like the second half of high school, but for middle school and the first half of high school, I was in a religious school, and like sex ed consisted of don't have sex till you're
Don't
married
have
because
sex.
you can get pregnant or STDs. The
That
end.
was it.
I mean,
Yeah,
that was like,
and that's
like
how she
5
ended
minutes.
up pregnant.
Don't
with
have sex, and you'll
STDs.
die.
We basically had a
Yep.
year of sex ed. Our wellness class was basically sex ed, and it was all about like we had he put on something that was called the arousal chart on the
What?
overhead projector. Does anybody remember the overhead projector?
yes, I
Okay.
love
So like
those.
I'm sitting there
projector.
yeah,
The
14-year-old
arousal
Mara is
part?
sitting 14-year-old Mara is sitting there like chatting with her friends about I don't know, Sailor Moon or something. And all of a sudden like overhead projector on, transparency down, it just says arousal chart, and we're all like, what? And it's like it basically the whole point was to show how men are like disgusting sex obsessed pigs and women are just like frigid non-sex wanting people. So it'd be like
way to
eye
screw us
contact.
all up so much.
Yeah, it was like eye contact, men slightly aroused, women nothing, and like it would just go down and down, and it was like Basically, like,
Yeah.
woman smiles, men, like, full boner. Women, nothing. Like, I mean, it was just like the
Yeah, this sounds very familiar. Yeah, it's weird. It's
Yeah.
wild. Okay, so for anybody who's not from the US, no. So this is the thing with the states is like there are public schools where each individual state determines the curriculum. So some more conservative states will have very different curriculums from more liberal states. But then also you can choose to go to private schools, which don't even always have much oversight at all, depending on state laws.
And whose origin, for the most part, is deeply racist because, anyway, that's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
But
That's a whole nother conversation.
No. So like when I went to private religious school, it was all like creationism. They like evolution is wrong and big. I mean, so yeah, like that was basically kind of what I grew up on.
Chart. That's so. I mean, South Carolina is pretty conservative, but I remember in sex ed in high school, this lady, she was really sex positive. Like she was like, I want you guys to have great sex, kinky sex, but safe sex. Like, and so like, I just always remember that. And I'm surprised that happened in South Carolina. And she was like, so
did you get to put the condoms on the banana? I feel deprived that I never got to do that.
No, but my mother traumatized me at a young age by doing that, but she used a cucumber.
That's like real unrealistic expectations, I feel like.
Yeah.
That is
She taught me about that way before school did. Like she bought books from the library.
Good for mama.
Sat down and
that's good. But
I mean,
you know, the cucumber and the banana are very false.
Yeah.
False advertisements. False expectations.
Yeah.
Everybody is not built the same.
Maybe like a pickle, but
Mara,
maybe not this gigantic zucchini.
A pickle?
Unless you're hanging out with the Ice Planet Barbarians.
A man
and then
in
it's
a
like
Sarah J. Maas book, then yes, you are a full cucumber.
Yeah. Look,
I wasn't
you know
taught
what?
anything about non-straight sexuality. Like everything was assumed to be hetero, obviously.
So yeah, whereas like for us it was definitely just like it's wrong and it's a choice kind of thing. But also like I think I don't know if it was explicit or not, but for a long time I had this idea that it was just like a normal thing where like most girls were sometimes attracted to other girls and it didn't mean you weren't straight, which is why it took me till I was 30 to realize I wasn't straight.
Yeah.
I mean, like that's, you know, a thing.
The only acknowledgement we had that like somebody might be gay was that we had like chapel speakers who were basically like gay conversion survivors. So like they were gay, but they had like been brainwashed into thinking they were straight. So they would like come and talk to us about that.
I have been delivered. Do you remember that, Ashley?
Listen,
yeah.
What's the gospel singer's name that said he was gay and now he's straight?
Oh, what's that guy's name?
I know who you're talking about.
Donnie McClurkin.
I feel so bad for him because he's like alone. He's like, I don't think I'll ever have someone because he's like, you know, been saved or whatever. And now he's straight, but he's like, I don't have that person to look when I like wake up, you know, beside. And it's like, cause maybe you're denying
you're gay.
Yeah. You don't want a woman, you don't, and that's fine. But he's, you know, big in the church, gospel singer. And that's just wild. Sad.
Yeah.
No.
What?
Man.
Oh, y'all. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, like we had dances, but it was like literally you had to stay like 6 inches apart from each other. Like they would
they had a basketball that they would take around to measure how far apart you were, and they would say, leave room for the Holy Spirit, and they'd put it there. And we weren't allowed to call them dances. They were called functions.
Oh.
Yeah.
Even though there was at times dancing.
Mara, when are we getting this memoir? I need one.
Oh,
I mean, this is like, I mean, I'm joking about trauma bonding, but me and my like all of my friends from that era, it is truly a bond for life because it's like we'll bring things up casual, like, you know, the day I mentioned that like our wellness teacher told us that we needed to button up our shirts because we were tempting him and everyone else. The first time I brought that up to non-Christians, they were like, excuse me? And I was like, I didn't, okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Did you guys get this stuff, Reclaiming Virginity? I remember this was, we had this.
No, you can't do that. We had the rose. If you take a petal off a rose, you can't put it back on. So you'll just have a stem to give your husband. There's no reclaiming your virginity.
These metaphors, though.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
She's
or like
ruined.
if you or it's like unwrapping a present and ripping the wrapping paper that's supposed to stay wrapped until it's time to give it. Yeah.
You can try to tape it, but you can tell it's been opened.
So I did get some of this reclaiming stuff, but it was more of like a miracle thing where like you could pray and God could gift you with like reclaiming your virginity.
I don't know if you're
I don't know.
I don't know what I don't know what kind of physical miracle that is, but it sounds painful.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd want that.
Yeah.
Religion is so
it's interesting.
It's something.
Yeah.
The institution of it.
Especially Christianity. Yeah, like the institution of the church. It ain't.
Yeah. It ain't it for me.
Not for
Don't
me.
tell my mama that though, but it ain't for me.
I mean,
Mama.
No.
yeah. Well, and I guess this is the thing is like I have a very complicated relationship with the church, and it's still hard for me to figure out because like I do still consider myself to be a Christian, like a very liberal Christian, but like finding a church that I feel comfortable in with like raising kids in, like it's hard.
It's hard
because I want that to be a part of my kids' life, but I want it to be one where like I'm comfortable with what they're learning, and that's tricky.
Me as well. I am in the same spot. I want that to be a part of growing up, but I cannot for the life of me. I cannot find a church that's doing it.
I will say that with the pandemic, church attendance / membership has officially like broken under 50% in the US for the first time. So I think a lot of people tasted the joy of sleeping in on a Sunday and will not be relinquishing that enjoyment anytime soon.
Yeah.
Amen. Yeah.
But I don't I'm telling a lot of crazy stories. I do want to caveat, like, if it's working for people, I'm not trying to like yuck someone's yum.
Yeah.
It did not work for me, and I do have a lot of trauma around it. So I deal with that through humor because
yes.
Yeah.
If you don't laugh, you'll cry.
I get it. No, I get it.
Is
yes.
Aaron.
It is indeed.
I'm a good Catholic.
Yeah.
Hey, you're hitting the high holidays. You're checking in on the candy days.
Those are important.
Yeah. It's it messes with you. I'm like it's one of those things where I think like sometimes some people would probably be like, well, does it matter because like you're married and like I'm married to a man at
but it matters.
Nothing it does, but it matters, and part of it is that it reframes how I like understand my own history, because like recognizing that I can look back on a lot of stuff and be like, oh
yeah, you're like, oh, so that was
like so many more things make sense to me now.
Yeah.
And like I think it's important. It's like part of understanding yourself,
In that video I did about the essay, I forgot what they called it. It was like heteronormativity or something that is just like assumed that everyone is.
Yeah.
Has just, I don't know. I don't want to say but like messed up a lot. Like everyone just assumes like they make that the standard, and that has made a lot of people, even if you're bisexual in a hetero relationship, kind of put that to like, no, that's not what it is, and then so. Boo.
Yep. No, for sure. I'm like, it's like at some point I was like, oh, this isn't like how everybody is. Oh, okay.
Well, like that's become like a meme almost on TikTok of people coming out to their parents as being either gay or bi, and their parent being like, everybody is attracted to people of the same gender. You just choose not to act on it. And they're like, well, Dad, sounds to me like maybe
Maybe. Yeah.
Maybe.
I mean, honestly, like that's like not that far off of a response that I got. Anyway, yeah, it's like
Yeah.
very interesting.
I think I think that's like not an uncommon response, but guess what?
Oh, the side hugs. The side hugs. It took me so long to like think it was like feel like it was okay to hug people, like hug men not from the side, because that
How
was
dare
like,
you thrust your tempting breasts into his chest?
She's a seductress.
God.
How dare you?
She's a seductress.
oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yo, I grew up with a grandmother. My great grandmother went to a Pentecostal,
Ooh.
like deep South Pentecostal. No
Ooh.
makeup, no earrings, no pants.
Oh.
Did she have
And-
culottes?
Huh?
Did she have culottes?
Mm-mm.
All the Pentecostals I knew had culottes, like because they were pants, but they looked like skirts.
Mm-mm.
So it was like,
And I'll never forget the moment that he said that it was two things. And this is crazy. As a child, I felt like something was wrong with it. It was one service we had went to, and he said a woman preaching is like eating chewed up bread. It's disgusting. And then another, it was a graduation ceremony for a woman who was a part of the church, and her daughter had just got her doctorate in mathematics. She was going to be working for some testing company creating math questions. And he's like, "Oh, now you done got your degree. Now it's time to go back home and fulfill your womanly duties." Like just stuff like that. Like that stuff makes a big impression on kids.
Mm-hmm.
It really does. People don't realize how big of an effect it has on kids. And the fact that he used my great grandmother's funeral to preach about the rapture, y'all. Her funeral, though. Her funeral.
So, yeah, one of my good friends passed away very unexpectedly. No, it was right before Donald Trump got elected. So it was 5 years ago, coming up on 5 years ago. And that was actually a very crystallizing moment for me of leaving the church was her funeral, because the entire, and I want to be clear, this is what she would have wanted. She was very religious, like not trying to knock it for what it was for the family. But the whole thing was about like, this is God's will, like she's in a better place. This is all good. And I'm like, how can you say that when there's somebody who's didn't even make it to 30? And what do you mean? Like she died on her 18-month wedding anniversary. Like this man is 30 years old and a widow. Like, what do you mean that this is like that was a real, like, I don't need a worship service in my funeral. For me personally, in my grieving process, having that at the funeral was very traumatic.
I don't know. I didn't have this deeply like from, school and everything. It was only older, and for some reason, I don't know if it's anxiety or whatever, my brain clings to the thought of hell. And so that's I feel like that's my biggest thing that keeps me being Christian adjacent, as I like to say, because I don't agree with a lot of things, but then I'm like, but wait, if I die tomorrow, will I be burning in eternal flames? And then I start worrying again.
Yeah. Let me tell you.
I was going to say, I can give you a whole history if you want to understand how that whole thing came to be.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's some really interesting history of theology where it isn't until pretty recently that people believed in hell the way that they talk about it now. They thought about it more as like, I guess, like more as like a place where people would like eventually get out of, almost like a purgatory type thing of like, if you need to learn and be reconciled to God, that you would go to this place where that happens, where it's kind of like the difference between like, oh, we throw people in jail versus we try to rehabilitate them. Like the perspective of hell used to be more of this rehabilitating thing, more universalist. And it is interesting. Like there are which is, I mean, at this point, kind of more what I believe, but it's, there's a lot of interesting stuff.
St. Gregory of Nyssa on the soul and the resurrection.
Yeah.
No hell. This is from like 150 AD.
Yeah. No.
So,
Yeah. No. There a lot of early Christian theologians. There were a couple that believed in like the modern ideas of it, but many of them believed that everybody would eventually end up with God in the afterlife, like in heaven, sort of. But like maybe there would be almost like this period of reconciliation. So yeah, it's not like it's interesting. Yeah.
I had Christians when my dad died comforting me that like they were all basically like, you know, people convert on their deathbeds all the time. Yeah. Basically because they knew he wasn't like a evangelical. So it was like basically like, hey, we know that he's in hell, but here's some like scraps of comfort to try to make you feel better about it. And I'm like, oh yeah, that was also a very clarifying moment of like, oh no, I'm not worried about that. Like don't worry. He's fine.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So Brittany, yes to this. This is so bad. I saw a lot of this also of like maybe not loving God enough, but not praying enough or not having enough faith of like seeing mental illness or like illness. Yeah, like you just need to pray.
You don't need therapy. You need Jesus.
You need to be prayed for.
What your sin is that's making you.
Yeah.
Well, and I saw people who would like go to a church that I went to at one point that was really into like miracles and prayer and stuff. And there would be people who would like have serious mental illnesses and go off medication because they thought that was what God was telling them to do. And like it did not go well.
But you know, anytime I hear stuff like that, I'm like, well, why do you think God gave people the ability to become things like therapists? Why like it's not logical. Like, and you know, the Black community struggles with that a lot because the Black community is extremely religious, especially in the Deep South. Extremely religious.
Yes.
My best friend, she just finished getting her PhD in psychology, and that was what her dissertation was about, was essentially like how to improve access to therapy for religious Southern Black people.
Because it's
of how to like
we don't relate to that population. We don't talk about it. You have mental health issues. The first thing your Black family will tell you to do, pray about it. Give it to God. And it's like, that's why we have so much cyclical crap going on in our community.
Nobody deals with it.
Because nobody talks about it. Nobody wants to. It's just now becoming a thing in 2021 where the Black community is acknowledging that there's some serious trauma that needs to be dealt with. And that needs to be dealt with through a therapist. And then dealing with Black men in trauma, child. That's a whole ball game its own. And I'm like, let me tell y'all something. Ain't no way you could just pray about this and you think that this is just gonna magically go away. It don't work like that.
But they do.
But they
give it to God, he'll give it right back.
But that's exactly why I feel like I am such, and I tell people this all the time, I'm very much so someone who falls on the spiritual side. I'm all about that one-on-one, that personal relationship. Like, I will always say, like, for me personally, my faith, I do believe in God, but I cannot get down with the institution of a church. I can't, because the damage that has been done to specifically like the Black community and Black women.
No,
I can't do it.
Yeah,
because they be the first ones to cover up some really, really grimy stuff when it as it applies to Black women. I can't do that. No.
Yeah, it's awful. I mean, even my parents, anytime I go home, I just go to church to avoid arguments. I'm just like, let me go. It's not worth fighting over. But, you know, like I don't go here or wherever I've lived. But yeah, even when I told my mom, like I was going to therapy and like I got on this medication, she was like, really? Like, is that really what you need? And the same thing, like to pray about it. And she's like, I don't know about that. I don't know if you should be doing that. And I'm like, no, this is, I should have done it a long time ago. But
my mom did the same thing. You don't need to be on that medication like that. You need to pray about it.
Yeah. It's like, no.
Oh
my gosh.
And I mean, to be clear, there are certain.
Oh no.
Oh
this
my
is
gosh.
Horrible. Oof.
I'm so sorry, Valerie.
I'm sorry. That's awful.
Yeah, and I want to be clear. There are certainly Christians who support therapy and support counseling. Like,
there are, yeah.
Not that doesn't exist, but there is. I can only speak for my own experience, and in my own experience, like I think specifically maybe in the South, possibly other places, there's a real feeling, like there's this feeling of us versus them, and us always has to have the answers. Them can't have those answers. So if you go to therapy, it has to be a Christian therapist, and those therapists are trained to only have a very specific certain set of tools that just can't address all the issues that people have. And like, if your issue is like, for instance, like you are not straight and you feel, you know, constant guilt and trauma for being told like the intrinsic part of who you are is wrong. A Christian therapist is not really going to be able to like,
or if it's the church, they're not gonna, you can't,
or if exactly, like most of my trauma is religiously based. Exactly.
Like, no,
or like I had a Christian therapist who like made me relive like trauma moments, and she would say, okay, like where is Jesus in this moment? Find Jesus in this memory. And it's like, okay, now I can look back on that and say like, that's literally abuse. Like that's literally like an abusive practice from a therapist. But like at the time I was like, oh, okay. Like, sure, I'll try to imagine Jesus in this horrible traumatic moment. So now I'm associating the person who's supposed to like love me with this awful traumatic moment. So anyway,
I think that's like pretty common as like a way of
Ooh, Shalina, where do you live? Sorry, I don't mean to make that like awkward, but I may have a recommendation for you depending on where you are, if you're still looking.
Yep. Yes. Yeah, I'm with you. And the thing is too, is like, I do believe that, I mean, and you know, everybody's different on this, but like, I do actually believe that prayer can do things and can't, but like, that should not be the only thing you're doing, you know? Like, I guess that's the thing, is like, I believe in like prayer being powerful, but like also that God made medicine
exactly
and humans with minds who can create things, and like I don't know, I was like
people with the vaccine who are like, I'm protected by the blood of God.
Child, them be the main ones with their kids running around with measles and mumps. Them be the same folks running around doing stuff like that. That means that for me, it's just one of those situations where I feel like, how can you only believe one aspect of this? You don't believe that God has given people the ability to create vaccines or to help people with mental health issues. So it's kind of like, I don't get how you don't see that. Like, there's nothing wrong with saying, I'm gonna pray, I'm gonna pray about it, but I'm also gonna make sure I call this therapist. Like, I don't get that.
I don't understand.
I don't get that.
Christian, like some people with the limited views. There was like, I posted a meme the other day and it was like Jesus looking down at us, and it's like, why aren't you loving your neighbor? I specifically requested it. Like, because people just I remember growing up and then being like, you can't just like pick and choose from the Bible or Christianity. But I'm like, but that's what a lot of people do though. You do
watch it. Are you wearing a wool blended dress right now, ma'am?
I'm like, no, that's exactly what I'm going to do. I like this psalm here. I do not like this book here.
Which is fair. Like, I also feel that way about the Bible, but like, don't try to then like,
use
tell
it
me you believe every word.
And I think the thing is too, is that like interpretation, I don't think people always realize like how much they are bringing to their interpretation of things too, because like, we lost Jess. Okay.
Bye, Jess.
Here she comes back.
It is 4 a.m. for her.
Sorry.
Like I think that's the thing, is people will be like, well, clearly this is what this says. I'm like, yeah, but here's another way you could interpret this very, very different. Like, I think that's the thing is like, people, I don't. It's a whole conversation.
Oh, man. What?
Oh.
Yeah.
There's like so many shysters
Good.
selling like Jesus diets that I'm like, Miss Ma'am,
Yep.
I don't think Jesus cared about your Slim Fast. Like, I'm sorry.
No.
Oh, goodness gracious.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
And that's why a lot of churches are losing people or like not having.
I mean, they are. Yeah.
Church is like, they don't have a real, like a younger congregation and they're like losing people. And it's like, because you don't want to change. Nobody is wanting to listen to this or this.
There people who are interested in this topic, I don't know if people know Rhett and Link. They're big YouTubers, but they started off as they were in Campus Crusade. That's how I knew them. They like led some of our conference stuff, and they have deconstructed. But they had a really interesting couple of podcasts where they talked about their experience of why they deconstructed. But to your point, Jess, one of them was saying, your kids are not leaving the church because they don't like Jesus. Your kids are leaving the church because they see who Jesus is and they see what you're doing in your church and they say, this is not lining up.
Yep.
Like, he's like he basically was saying like the number one people I know who have left the church were like the most hardcore, like youth group, like on fire for God. And like, eventually they looked around and realized like, this is not it.
Jesus sounds like a cool dude, but
He sounds great.
Y'all aren't listening to homie.
Jessica, I love this. I've heard people make this point before, which is kind of funny that like if you really think about it, I think this is especially worth considering when some Western centric people will be like, oh, these other religious practices are so weird and out there. And I'm like, okay, but really, let's think about what like symbolically communion is like. How like
in the Anglican, or Episcopalian ceremony, it's like to eat of your body and to drink of to eat of your dear body and drink of your blood. And I would have moments of like, if somebody came in right now, they'd be like, say what?
Yeah. On the topic of trigger warnings, I think I saw that on a thread that somebody had put a content or trigger warning for a book with cannibalism, but it was that they were taking communion in the book.
Body and blood, man.
I'm sorry, y'all. I can't. This whole Juneteenth thing.
What happened? Well, I know it was passed.
What's next? I know Uncle Joe signed it in.
Literally, Andrew was supposed to go to work tomorrow, and he got a text like, well, it's now a federal holiday, so you don't have to come into work tomorrow.
I just feel like...
Wait, is that like effective now?
The military put out a thing immediately.
Well, I should go to work tomorrow. Why are any of my Black coworkers going to work tomorrow? I hope
I just feel like, oh man, as a Black person, it's kind of difficult because I feel like I get the intention, but I don't at the same time.
It's like putting a Band-Aid over everything. They're like, well, are you facing systemic oppression and, police violence? Well, here, have a federal holiday, but we'll forget about the rest.
And then having a day off probably would help.
Huh?
Having a day off to process all the bullshit probably would help, but that's not really going to solve the root cause.
It doesn't solve anything, not when your entire country is on the verge of banning critical race theory. Like, that
this is okay.
Yeah,
it makes no sense.
How do you talk about Juneteenth with kids without talking about? I guess you just don't call it critical race theory.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Like,
they're not even teaching critical race theory. It's literally they just don't want accurate history to be taught in schools. Like, I've been reading a lot of threads where people are like, actual critical race theory is like a master's level, like, discourse and like stuff that people talk about like law school and stuff. And so of course they're always using words they don't know shit about, like Mara, your stories when they were using intersectional as an adjective. They just use words that they know will make people mad. And they're like, It's like, no, we just want you to teach actual history and not skim. Like there was a clip from like, I don't know if he was like a law somebody, and he was like, well, yeah, if you teach slavery, you need to teach the good parts too. What? What good parts?
The good part?
Over and say, sure, we had slaves, but you know, they were better for it. And now we've moved past it. Everything's fine.
But here's the other thing too. You have to think about who occupies federal positions. Okay? Most Black people do not have federal jobs to begin with. So they're not going to get the day off. So who's really benefiting from Juneteenth? It's not Black people. And I saw something on Facebook where somebody's company is doing like a Juneteenth like spirit week. Like I just can't and then people are now making a mockery of it.
They're having sales and Juneteenth merchandise. Of course, it's just like
please don't make them as bad as the Target Pride collections.
Lord. MLK Day, that didn't eradicate, you know, like they're like, we're giving you another holiday. And what? And what else? But that's what this country does. They're like, well, we'll give you this, but we'll ignore all of these other things that is actually what you're asking for. And like, I just finished reading Freedom is a Constant Struggle by Angela Davis. And, Lord, I was just like, say it. And she was talking about like, you know, the Black Panther Party and the things that they were working for. And it's so crazy that they were started in like, I think 1966. And the 10 things on this list, we still don't have today. But we got a federal holiday though. Oh. Yeah. And then of course I saw a tweet by stupid ass Candy Owens. I hate that bitch. Who was like, Juneteenth is so stupid. Of course they have a holiday because of racism. I'm gonna celebrate July 4th. Okay.
Candace Owens, let me tell you something. Candace Owens gets paid to say the foolery that she says. She does not believe anything that she says. Candace Owens will go on national TV and say that she did not believe that racism was that serious before Obama got elected. But this is the same person who called on the NAACP to sue her school for racism before Obama got elected. Candace Owens yaps at her mouth for money. And I keep telling people, if I ever see her in person, have my bail money ready.
It's on site.
Because I'm slapping her on site.
She literally just follows money. She has no moral that she stands on besides where the money is.
Which is very American.
Yeah. True. I mean,
so I guess she's
you know what's funny? I didn't know what Juneteenth was until last year. And then I like mentioned it to my husband. He was like, oh yeah, we used to celebrate that when I was a kid. And I'm like we've been married like how long?
You never brought it up.
Like, okay. So yeah, you know. Yeah.
I had somebody in a library group ask, what are some good movies and shows to watch related to emancipation or civil rights? Because they get tomorrow off in honor of Juneteenth.
13th.
I'm sorry to laugh.
On Netflix, they should watch 13th. But I mean, also the fact that they need to ask, like, can you not Google it?
It takes Juneteenth for you to be interested.
Love it.
I just have to laugh at some things because if not, I think I would just implode.
But it's like, if you're gonna like, what would an actual I saw a tweet thread from quoting like I think Biden and Kamala's Uncle Joe and Auntie Kamala's speeches. And like they were talking about the symbolic significance and like how that's an important step forward, which I don't necessarily disagree with. But like if you're going to make it a symbolic gesture, then why don't we say instead of July 4th being our National Independence Day, why don't we make it Juneteenth? Like let's get rid of July 4th and then Juneteenth is our actual national holiday. Let's change our national anthem to Lift Every Voice and Sing. And then maybe that's like an actual, like a real symbolic gesture that has like some actual weight behind it and doesn't just feel like, I don't know. I feel like if you're going for the symbolic gesture, like actually go for it. This feels very like.
And so last minute, like right before.
Yeah. I mean, very last minute.
They're like, let's slide that in.
Somebody
This is good to
said-
know, though. If you all haven't watched 13th, I didn't know it was free on YouTube. So
Somebody said white people are about to treat Juneteenth like Cinco de Mayo, showing up in the bar in dashikis.
You're gonna be like, "Where's the fried chicken? I'm here to celebrate."
Hot chicken.
Sweet tea, or they'll be probably drinking Crown Royal.
oh man, yeah. I mean, that's not wrong.
It's not wrong, though. It's not wrong. It's not wrong at all.
Somebody, it was a tweet, and with the passing, and it said, "It's giving me," and it was that picture from like Nancy Pelosi and all of them, where they had on like the dashikis and they're like kneeling, and it's just like,
Yeah, that was. Oh my god.
Yeah, don't, Mara. Yeah, just don't.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
please don't.
I'm sorry. It's not my fault. Beyonce told everyone in her homecoming
I'm done.
concert.
oh yes, watermelon also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness.
Oh my!
No.
Did you guys see?
Oh, no.
Okay, well, I don't even want to make you madder. Basically, that joke that Bree just made is an actual thing in Georgia.
No.
the blackface bar. It's a Confederate themed bar. It's on there.
Oh, jeez.
Yep,
Oh
Oh my god.
Yep.
Great.
The drink menu. That's what I need my bail money for. If I'm ever in that town and I see that, I will.
Somebody made a good point,
Wow.
though. It's kind of amazing. Juneteenth is going to be a federal holiday for reasons teachers won't be allowed to explain to their students
Exactly.
out of fear of
Yeah.
critical race theory backlash. If
Yeah.
that ain't the truth,
Look.
I really do want to see like what the curriculums are around slavery in these states that are passing these laws, because it's going to be like, yeah, there were slaves. Well, why were there slaves? I mean,
They wanted a job.
Happened to
Gave them
be
something
from
to do.
Africa. Like it was just, like accidentally.
They just came over. It makes me think of, have you ever watched the Boondocks? There's a racist, he's black, but he hates black people character in this. It's an animated show. And he says, well, you know, black people should be grateful. We brought them over here. We gave them structure. And what do? They march. And I feel like people really think that. Like, we took them out of the jungles and gave them structure and gave them a work ethic. So they should be grateful.
Yeah.
Uncle-
Like there's so much. There's so much.
America's a mess. Hot.
Yeah.
I mean,
There's
yeah.
so much that doesn't get talked about, and especially in the South.
I've learned so much on the internet since leaving school, like so much from Twitter and then like, you know, reading things on my own. And I'm like, what? I didn't know these things.
Yeah. Yep.
You know, I will say it is pretty much every country. Oh yeah. Aaron.
It's like
come on.
every month is White History.
Yeah. Every country like tries to indoctrinate its population with a specific like mythos around its creation. Like that's that's like a part of national identity. America is like particularly good at doing that. Mm-hmm. And that's what makes all of it so insidious, because like if you don't like speaking, I guess, as a privileged white person, if you don't encounter some ability to like have critical thinking for yourself, it is so easy to just be like, yeah, we're the good guys. Like, that's just like, you're so indoctrinated into like, America is the city on the hill, and America is like bringing democracy to the world. And like, America is the, best place on the planet to be. I'm proud to be an American. Like, I mean, if you don't like, if you don't challenge those things, our system is so good at like, at least into like rural white populations. We may not be the best at everything, but we are like one of the best at that. And it's like, how do you break that down? Yeah. I don't think there's anything wrong in being proud of where you're from, in the sense of like rooting for your teams at the Olympics, like that level, that's like the energy you should have about your country. But like it's literally like a civil religion. Like America is as an idea is a god.
I do think that this is interesting because in the UK and I hear also in Canada, like there's not even a lot of these conversations happening.
Yeah, in Canada, they don't think that they have racism anymore. And they don't have as much as we do, but
it's still there. Yeah.
Yeah. That was my observation as an American living in Canada. I'm sure not all Canadians feel that way.
Well, I mean, and I've heard Black Canadians talk about how there's like, oh yeah, there's racism. So yeah, like, yeah.
That was the feedback I got from Black Canadians who I went to school with, who were like, yeah, no.
Yeah. Yep.
At least we hoarded all the vaccine. Yay, America. But we can't get any more people to take it, so all that hoarding went to waste. Yeah. Love it for us.
Yeah, Alexandra, I'm kind of with you because like I think this is the thing is like sometimes there seems to be this idea that if we acknowledge mistakes, it means not seeing anything positive. And I don't think that has to be true. Like, I also think that we can both like celebrate the ideals that America has stood for, but also recognize that it has never actually lived up to those ideals, you know? If that makes sense, that like the theoretical ideals are great. You know, I don't know.
America has written a check that we've never been able to cash.
Yes. Yeah.
Yep. Somebody told Candace Owens, but y'all want to keep up the Confederate statues and call it culture, but celebrating Juneteenth is anti-American. Man, these people don't make nothing make sense. Nothing makes sense. Nothing makes sense.
I want somebody who's like actually like smart, not me, like smart and like well versed in all these things to like actually have a debate with Candace Owens, but she probably wouldn't have the balls to sit down with them, ripped to shreds. But I want
somebody. Have you seen her have a conversation with Cornel West?
No, she did.
Oh yes, she did.
Oh, how'd that go?
You know how that went. You know how that went. All Candace tried to do the entire time is over talk Cornel West because she knew you can't debate that man. Candace doesn't have a lick of intelligence whatsoever. They're like water and oil. They don't mix. Okay? Stupid is as stupid does, and that is Candace Owens. Once again, I'm letting y'all know officially since this is recorded. If I see her in person, have my bail money ready. I'm slapping her on sight. Yes. Slapping her on like it's got to be
just
a mess.
Oh, I like that.
Oh, this is interesting. I like that too. I like that.
Yes, that makes sense.
I think that's a great
nationalism.
Differentiate. Yep. Well, guys, we're at like 2 hours and 40 minutes.
Yeah, 2 hours.
Content warnings.
Like, covered a lot of ground. Content warnings. Oh my gosh. Like wow, a lot of stuff.
Important conversations.
So the bottom line is, if anybody knows a woke warlock in the Nashville area, tell him to hit me up. Bonus points if he takes me to a bookstore for our first date.
And Ashley is going to find some librarian series. Can't wait.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We're gonna find Ashley her hate to love romance at a librarian's conference.
Librarian romance.
Yes.
I love it.
Also, she is contemplating violence against Candace Owens.
I am.
The other
I will copy that.
I'm like, I'm just like waiting for this video to get demonetized. Oh my gosh.
It's fine. It's fine.
I mean, we started talking. You did jump off talking about incest in like the first 5 minutes. So, R.I.P. your monetization. I'm kidding. R.I.P. your monetization.
It's fine. This was good. Well, thank you guys for joining. Thank you everybody for hanging out. Man, it's been we've been on here a long time. I'm surprised so many people are still here. So, yeah.
I don't even know how many people are here still.
There's like 188 people still. We were well over 200 at one point. So.
Oh wow. Yeah.
I
was assuming there was like 40 of us left here in the chat. Well, there you go.
Oh, okay. No. Oh, no.
We got
like a lot. We got a lot. Well, thanks, everybody. Have a good night. Enjoy Juneteenth.
What does one say? Is it Happy Juneteenth? I guess. I don't know. What's the greeting? Can we?
Are there fireworks?
Has Uncle Joe given us a decree on that? I don't know.
I don't know. But Walmart and Target should start selling shirts soon. You know that's going to happen. What are the official colors?
Have you seen their Raggedy Pride collection? You don't want to see their Juneteenth collection. It's going to be awful.
No, it is. It's true. Yeah. All right. Well, there you go. If you're on the West Coast, it's early for you. It's like after 11 o'clock for me. So I'm like,
good morning.
It's 4 a.m. for Jess.
And 4 a.m. for Jess.
It's 5.
This is the MVP.
It's 5.
I started to see the light come up.
Oh God.
Well, we appreciate you taking away from your sleep to do this.
Oh, goodness. Great nap today.
All right. Well, have a good night, everybody. And we're going to